Beginning the recording. All right, so we're fully recording. And Chairman, when you're set to begin the meeting.
Yeah, I'm set. Okay,
right.
we'll open the meeting for the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission for February 17th, 2022 to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
And then if you can give me a second and I can put the screen up and okay,
Cool.
Ms. Rich, you should have everybody up there.
Yep. Bob Jerkel,
Present.
Carol Wagner,
Present.
Jody Rich here, Richard Brophy,
Present.
Ryan Lewis,
Present.
Daniel Rosenberg,
Present.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Okay, let it also be known that City Council member Missy Waldman, who's our City Council liaison, is in attendance, as well as Carlos Trejo, the Director of Planning and Community Development Department, Dawn Doty, Senior Planner, and Bridget Waters, Administrative Assistant. Carlos, am I missing anybody else who might be on?
Well, no, not at this moment. Now I am going to switch back to the screen here, to the agenda screen. Bear with me 1 second. All right.
Okay, so it's kind of funny that we're having this again, but it's not related to COVID. It's more the weather. So little change in pace, but this is kind of nice to have, especially since we were snowed out last session as well. So we definitely need to get this meeting in. So I appreciate everybody's patience and time, to do this. Just to go over a little bit of the procedures of how we do this, we do take public comments. But when we do take public comments, this is going to be for items that are not on the agenda. If you do have a public comment that's related to something on the agenda, we ask that you wait until that agenda item is brought up. And when we go through each business item, there'll be a report by staff that will review it. There'll be some discussion with commission members. And then we'll bring on the petitioner, have some discussion with them, and then we'll take on public comments related to each item. And at that point in time, if you can raise your hand, it's like a little button at the bottom where you can indicate that you have a comment that you would like to make, and then Carlos will bring you up onto the panelists list. We do ask you when you come on that you state your name and address for the record. We ask that you keep your video on as well as, unmute yourself because it automatically defers to having you muted. So it's a classic thing. So just be aware of it and look out for that. And we do ask you that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. To respect to make sure we get everybody's opinion heard, as well as respecting the time for everybody that's involved here. So, okay, Carlos, did I cover everything? Anything else?
No, sir. I think you got everything covered.
Good.
If there's anybody,
go ahead, Carlos.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So I'll ask for public comments now. These are, again, as a reminder, these are for items that are not on the agenda. So please raise your hand and if you do, and I think we'll pause here for about a minute or so, Carlos.
Yes, it just gives me some time in case there's a slow connection or transfer. Okay. So at this time, everybody that there are 13 attendees. Everybody appears to be associated with one of the agenda items. Okay.
That being, if you do have a public comment, and you weren't quick enough to identify that, we can ask for public comments again at the very end too, and just say so. Okay, we'll move on to old business, and we'll go on to item A, which is 1004 and 1014 Dolores Avenue. It's a preliminary subdivision plot for a 3-lot residential subdivision. Petition type, preliminary subdivision plat. Description is proposed 4-lot single-family residential subdivision. Petitioner is Jeff Schindler with Schindler Homes, and the property owner is Schindler Homes. Carlos?
Chairman, this item's been on our radar for since last summer. The petitioner's been working to re-subdivide an existing property addressed as 1004 Dolores Avenue, which is located right here. It is an existing improved property. You can see the home, and you should be able to see the a pool on the side. This property owner also owns the property directly north. It's a vacant, unimproved property that has a stream channel that kind of runs diagonally through the property in there. This property once consisted of 3 individual parcels, but they must have been combined over time to construct the home that is currently on the site. The petitioner was seeking to re-subdivide the property and to create 3 properties with the creek in there. And working with staff and over time, there was some items that we wanted to try to get addressed as part of the subdivision development. One were some roadway improvements here along Dolores Avenue to provide ample turning radius for fire vehicles. But another one was a unique condition that impacted the neighbor to the north at 1016 Dolores. It's a rectangular lot in which the stream also bisects the lot, but they actually own property on the other side of the creek. The assumption would be that when they need to maintain that back corner, they have to cross the creek to an extent. It's private property, so it doesn't belong to 1014 Dolores Avenue. So we asked the developer to engage with the property owner to the north to see if there was a possibility to swap properties alongside the creek. And they did work through the process. However, the owner at 1016 who is the actual owner does have a mortgage on the property, so that means there are other entities involved when there's a transaction or change in boundaries, and that got a little bit more complex. But the petitioner persisted and put together the 3-lot subdivision plat south of the creek, and then readjusted the property neighboring to the north to include the creek and widen the parcel in itself. And in this case, they would be able to have 3 developable lots. The commission viewed these at their meeting in January. I believe it was the 20th was the correct date, in which the commission authorized a variation in lot size standards, meaning that these lots would equal or exceed the average lot width and area of the similar lots within that neighborhood or subdivision. And in addition to that, recognize that a waiver would be necessary from the stream bank that runs diagonally. Right now, under Chapter 420, our stream buffer bank regulations, every stream has to have a undisturbed natural vegetative buffer with the intent of protecting the stream bank in its natural existence, and then provide an additional setback to that buffer. So there's a total of 50 feet on each side of the creek. However, this is not a natural stream bank. It is a gabion wall system that has been altered over time. So it is, again, it's not a natural stream bank, and therefore the commission has authority under Chapter 420 to consider waiving the first 25 feet, which is the undisturbed natural vegetative area. And we did discuss that at the January 20th meeting. The commission seemed to be in consensus to authorize that waiver as part of the preliminary subdivision plat. So what you have before you tonight is a preliminary subdivision plat reflecting how the 3 properties would be developed and how the property to the north would be realigned and accommodated with the creek. And the second thing you have with you tonight is the final subdivision plat. This is the legal instrument that actually gets recorded with the the county register of deeds, and actually creates those 3 lots. It's more that, again, it's a legal instrument that just identifies the property boundaries and such. We have reviewed both the preliminary subdivision plat and the final plat, and we find it consistent with the city's subdivision regulations, and recommend the commission consider approval of both of the preliminary subdivision plat and the final subdivision plat. Be glad to answer any questions, Chairman.
I don't have any questions. Does anybody else on the commission have any questions? Seeing none, do we need to bring on the developer or?
All right, I am going to transfer the developer, Mr. Schindler, in there, and unless there is any specific question Mr. Schindler has, I would assume the commission would be ready to take a motion. I am transferring Mr. Schindler over. And of
And
course,
we
he was
probably
also, I don't know.
Yeah,
Go
you're
ahead.
right, Brian. I know where you're going. We're going to take public comments as well.
Okay.
And maybe we should just, ask for the people to go ahead and raise their hand right now if you do have a public comment while we bring on Mr. Schindler, so we can kind of maybe speed it up a little bit.
Well, at this point, for the sake of our video viewers, I am going to stop sharing the screen so everybody can be seen, along with the petitioner, Jeff Schindler. And Jeff, if you're set, you can just introduce yourself, state your address.
Yes. Hello, Carlos. Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. Jeff Schindler with Schindler Homes, 303 Wardenburg Farms Drive, Wildwood, Missouri. And I really don't have anything to add. Super excited about the project, and been working on it a while with the city, and super excited to potentially be building homes and all of that, and certainly here to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schindler, for being on. I appreciate it. Does anybody on the commission have any questions or comments?
Chairman, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Carol.
Mr. Schindler, I just want to compliment you on your creativity.
Well, thank you very much. It was certainly a collaboration of efforts, and I'm excited and happy with the way it's turning out. So thank you very much for the compliment.
Good. Carlos, do we have any public comments related to this?
At this point, I don't see any hands shown. Again, if anybody would like to speak in regards to this petition at 1004, 1014, and 1016 Dolores Avenue, if you can just kind of click the hand raising button that's located at the center bottom of your Zoom screen. And at this time, yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, just a quick interruption. My understanding is there are two different motions here. One's to approve the preliminary subdivision plat, and the other is to forward the final plat to the city council. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there any way we can combine those, or do we have to keep them separate?
There'd be two separate motions, and they're prepared for you within the report and also for the screen. So I'll show you those.
Okay.
You'd have to act on the preliminary subdivision plat first.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought we already did that.
The commission motioned to authorize the variation in lot size standards at their January 20th meeting,
Okay.
but not necessarily act on the preliminary subdivision plat till we had some additional information.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. All right, Chairman, I don't see any hands. I'm going to go back and share the screen. And if you bear with me. And note it within the staff reports, which are posted online. We have prepared two motions for the commission to consider. Motion one, of course, is the preliminary subdivision plat that is solely acted upon by the commission. And then motion two will be the final subdivision plat in which the commission makes a recommendation to the city council.
Good. Do I hear a motion?
Chairman?
Please go ahead, Ms. Wagner.
Oh, I was going to defer, but that's fine. I'd like to motion, if I might. I'd like to move to approve the petition for the preliminary subdivision plat as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated February 17, 2022, subject to staff conditions noted therein, including authorizing the waiver to the undisturbed natural vegetative buffer and placement of a 25-foot wide easement entitled Stream Buffer Setback on each side of the stream bank, so as to permit a petition for a preliminary subdivision plat for a 4-lot subdivision of the property grounds currently addressed as 1004, 1014, and 1016 Dolores Avenue.
I will second that motion.
Motion's been made by Kara Wagner, seconded by Richard Brophy. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
All right, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I can have everybody up. And then I am going to take a roll call. Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approve.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Brophy,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approve.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
and Chairman Dragell.
Approved.
All right. And the motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plat passes unanimously. And Chairman, if you can bear with me 1 second, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. And then I will have the second motion. This will be acting on a final subdivision plat in the form of a recommendation to the City Council.
Good. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to forward to the City Council a recommendation to approve the petition for final subdivision plat as presented the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated February 17th, 2022, subject to any staff conditions noted therein, including placement of a 25-foot wide easement entitled Stream Buffer Setback on each side of the stream bank so as to permit a petition for final subdivision plat for a 4-lot subdivision of the property grounds currently addressed as 1004, 1014, and 1016 Dolores Avenue.
Chairman, I'll
Motion's been-
second.
Motion's been made by Richard Brophy, seconded by Kara Wagner. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Yes, sir. On the motion to approve, Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approve.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Brophy,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
Chairman Dragell.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously. Chairman, this item will then now be forwarded to the City Council in the form of an ordinance, and it will be scheduled at the council's meeting on February 22nd. We are trying to expedite the process because this item would have been on the February 3rd meeting that was canceled due to the weather, with the anticipation that the council would have seen this on February 22nd. And we're going to continue with that schedule. In there, if there's anything that you'd like me to forward to the council or any concerns, please let me know. But for the most part, we've done quite a bit of outreach on this to make sure the neighbors are aware, including the one to the north that is now participating as part of the plat.
Good.
All
No,
right.
I think that's good. And I think we should move on to the next item. So we thank you, Mr. Schindler. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Good. So I'll give you a second, Carlos, before we move on.
All right. Bear with me 1 second.
No problem.
Okay, Chairman, I should be sharing the screen now. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so we're on to item B, which is the Olivet Townhouse redevelopment project on Dealman Road. Petition type is rezoning, including conceptual master plan, site plan, community design, and concept stormwater reviews for a 2.824 acre townhouse development consisting of 35 units. Petitioner is Doug Cohen with Douglas Dealman LLC. Property owner is various members that are, I guess, under contract. So, Carlos?
Okay, Chairman, this item, of course, was informally introduced to the Commission on January 6th regarding a possible redevelopment here between the properties of 1115 and 1161 Dealman Road, just across the street from the Olivet Government Center or City Center. Then it was formally introduced as an agenda item on January 20th. And of course, this item was going to be on the February 3rd agenda, but due to the weather conditions, we did cancel that meeting. So before you tonight are the revisions that were submitted for the February 3rd meeting in there. Chairman, you provided a pretty good description of the development, 2.82 acre site, It consists of 7 structures with 5 townhouses in each structure. It has a U-shaped access road that runs that surrounds the property. It's along Dealman. In total, it consists of 35 units, and then there's various spaces in there. And you saw the revised illustration in there, kind of now showing the sidewalk in accordance with the grasscape area. You can see the utility lines and such, and some of the revisions that were incorporated. What I'm going to focus on is, again, there is a process. It requires a rezoning and a site plan review. The commission will recommend to the council the adoption of a master plan. In addition to that, you will act on the plat documents for combining the parcels into one development area, and then to whatever future indentures or development types that they will consider for that. And then you will conduct site plan reviews for the individual structures. The commission has 120 days from the date of introduction, in this case from January 20th, to forward a recommendation to the council. The council has 2 readings that would be scheduled regarding this, and then would also host a public hearing in one of those meetings. So we've provided your analysis in our staff report, and we discussed this at the January 12th, also at the meeting on the 6th. We find that the development is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan vision adopted in 2006, and that is to create a dynamic sense of place. That vision had some defined areas that looked to promote, the city looked to promote, and one was to create a city center on Olive Boulevard, just west of Dealman Road. That city center to consist of a variety of different uses, from residential to commercial, but there would be some type of walkable, low multi-story type of development, distinct and different from what you would see going on at I-170. The comprehensive plan promoted, talks about our community identity, our economic development, our transportation connections, and open spaces. And what we've reviewed, it's been the basis for the review. It's also the basis and the backbone of our codes and regulations to help further and promote these objectives and goals that are part of the comprehensive plan. From a staff perspective, this development, furthers that vision, is consistent with the city center character that the city is trying to promote in there, but it still has to be reviewed in accordance with the code to be considered to adjacent properties and to be able to address the issues. So at our last meeting, we talked in terms of a summary. We talked about the density of that. In our first report, we identified the various multifamily development projects that have been recently approved by the city, also those within close proximity within this development, including the Castlegate Villas development, Tower Hill, Olivet Terrace, and the Oliver. The Oliver being distinctly unique from this, but that the density levels within this development were within range in there and towards the lower end of that. The need that there would be outside agencies that would be part of the approval process. Primarily, Dealman Road is a county roadway and requires review and approval by the St. Louis County Department of Transportation. When we went through and Public Works, when we went through the government center, our city center process, we had to work closely with the county regarding the placement of our aprons and our entrances along Dealman Road. And we anticipate that the same issues will arise with this development. Staff did forward comments to the county in there, but we haven't heard anything from the developer as to what is the status of their application and what comments they have received in there. In addition to that, we haven't heard anything yet specifically from the St. Louis Metropolitan Sewer District. They do, I know, provide preliminary comments in there. We want to see those before any action is taken on the development. Some of the things in the review is that we part of the vision for the strategic plan and the city center concept area is to provide a cross-access easement or promote transportation connections, and all of a sudden the easement as it was defined in the plans earlier it isn't as articulated in the revisions that were received February 3rd. We need to further discuss the buffer along the west and north property lines and get that defined in accordance with Chapter 428. Chapter 428 is pretty clear regarding the 10-foot buffer and the screen wall that's provided and the landscaping counts that are necessary. The other thing we talked about in January 20th and January 6th was the streetscape and how those public-private spaces interact with one another. There's been some changes, but we'd like to see a little bit more provided, especially along Dillman Road. The commission had concerns regarding parking and requested that some on-street parking be incorporated into the overall development area. That still needs to be addressed. There was some questions regarding building heights, which we'll talk about a little bit and go over, but the heights that are being proposed, whether you call them the number of stories or the physical measurable height, are consistent with what is permitted within the city center district. There's been questions regarding financing in terms of the overall project cost in there, and then questions regarding how construction would be scheduled through that process, including how the foundations were going to be laid out, what is the timeline or the anticipated schedule, and most importantly for the adjacent properties along the west is when will the screening and buffering be implemented as part of that construction phase. So let's go again. I think from the density issue, we find it that it's consistent with a comprehensive plan. There's two different things when you talk about density. There's density overall in the number of units that are proposed on this 2.3 acre site. We think it's reasonable compared to its neighbor to the north and some of the surrounding developments within the city center district. But then there's the design component, and that's how you mold and put those units into the development area. But I think when you look at the number of units, I think that overall it's consistent with the strategic plan and again, the density counts that are surrounding the area. We still, one of the issues we wanted to talk about again was the cross-access easement. As you can see here from the January plans, there would be a cross-access easement on the north end in there. The emphasis is kind of reduced on the plan revisions we received February 3rd. And I went through all the sets because there's different parties involved in the developers team. There's a landscape architect, there's the architect, and there's the engineer. So we still want to see some consistency that the placement of a cross-access easement would be provided for any future redevelopment or street improvements to the north of the site that would provide access onto Dillman Road in there. So those have kind of disappeared on those revisions. Again, we want to make sure that we can work across access through here. And if there's other places in the site that they'd like to incorporate that, they need to kind of show us in there. Regarding the buffer, again, Chapter 428 is pretty clear. You're going to provide a 10-foot transitional yard. That transitional yard can include the sidewalk, it can include the landscaping, and a minimum 6-foot screen wall to be provided along adjacent single-family residential properties. This property to the west abuts adjacent single-family residential properties. And right now, on the landscape plan, we have some, I think there were the trash container areas, and it's not very clear that there's 10 feet back behind there. When you look at the architect's plans, there are some dimensions here, and I believe this one here is 12.27, but we need 10 feet behind that retaining wall for that buffer. In addition to that, that screen wall still doesn't appear neither in the landscape plans, the site plans, or the architectural plans. And it's clear the 6-foot screen wall needs to be provided along the west property line. Regarding the streetscape and public-private spaces, we talked about Dillman Road and trying to make Dillman Road, the walk along Dillman Road, a little bit more exciting, especially where we had some of these walkways, stairways into the road. Right now, it appears like it's starting to get developed in there, but there's some inconsistencies. So in the architectural plans, you start to see that there's a breakup in that retaining wall system. It seems to be a layered system in place, but then when you look at the landscape plans, it shows something different. And there, when you look at the engineering plans, it's also different. So we're trying to hone down to those public spaces. We'd like to see in that center stairway a distinction from the other two stairways that are both to the left and to the right of that development, that kind of provide some type of interesting public space along Dealman Road that can serve as an identity to the development and also as a node for a pedestrian as they go down Dealman Road. The other items that were discussed with the commission were that on-street parking and building heights. And again, the commission specifically back in 2006 made an amendment to the code to not consider 1-story, 2-story, split level, 1.5 story, because the definition and interpretation of those words varied by individuals, by professions, that we would measure height by a numeric linear length in there. And for single family residentials, it's 35 feet measured from grade to the highest peak of the roof. For commercials, it's usually on the lowest concrete level or the foundation level to the highest peak of the roof. And in this case, they're about 38 feet in height. There are 3 levels that are incorporated in the development. There is the basement garage level, there is the main level, and then there's a 2nd story level up here. And again, you can get confused and call them in different ways. If you look at it in this view, it's a 3-story. If you look at it in this view, it's a 2-story. If you look at it in this view, it's a 2.5 story. And the way the code is set out to read and regulate height is by a numerical length. And right now, the proposed height from the basement garage floor to the highest peak of the roof is roughly about 38 feet in there. The other thing that the commission talked about was the on-street parking. Sorry that the pictures are reversed, but it was trying to maximize the size. Is that the commission was looking for additional on-street parking, not necessarily off-street parking, for some on-street parking to be provided on the site. There was 2 things that we talked about back in January. One was there a potential to provide parking along the south side because there's not a transitional or buffer yard that's required because it abuts the commercial property. Right now it's the Jiffy Lube property. According to the engineer, that area doesn't work, and it may be because of the grades, but there's also a sanitary line that runs through there, though that doesn't prohibit surface area from going over there. So I'll let them answer that more specifically if it is a grading issue or so. Staff did check with the fire department to see if temporary parking would be allowed, but this U-shaped lane that encircles the development will be considered a fire lane, and parking is prohibited at all times within that fire lane. They have to have a minimum of 20-foot clearance at all times, and that's part of the fire code. And I understand the intent for it. It's unfortunate in there, but the fire department is consistent that's what the code calls for, and that is what will need to be provided, and it cannot be used as a secondary source of parking for on-street parking on the site grounds. So again, there was concerns expressed by the commission. I think we should discuss this again further. I think it would be helpful to find out if there's like a numeric number or an idea of how many stalls would be necessary. Remember, on the code section, there's the term off-street parking, and every unit has to provide off-street parking individually for each one, of course. And in this case, for a residential unit, we require 2 stalls per unit. The development here, as designed right now, identifies 4 stalls per unit. in there. It does not consider, nor does it require that on-street parking be provided. But through the site plan review process, which is what we go through in the code, the commission has the authority and also has to be cognizant of the need for parking on a development area when it undergoes its review. So it's well within the realm of the commission, and I think it was made pretty clear by the commission of a need to provide some additional on-street parking on the site grounds. There wasn't a numeric value that was applied to it, but I think again, the commission is looking for some additional on-street parking on the site grounds in there. Outside of that, Chairman, there was some discussions about the financing in terms of how that process was going to be set, some confusion or some requests for clarification of what some of those discussions were. I did go back to the January 20th meeting to try to figure out exactly specifically what was said, and it was unclear in terms of how the financing was going to work for this product in terms of unit by unit by unit, and also on the construction schedule. It'd be good and beneficial for the commission to get something in writing. That way it could be well articulated and then posted for publicly. So for the people that have asked that question, they have the specific answer or a consistent answer to that process. Same with the schedule of construction. Again, I got several inquiries. Those have been provided as part of your PDF packets from the subdivision to the west regarding the placement of the screen wall and the landscaping prior to the construction beginning on some of those units, making sure that that's part of the conditions of the approval in there. And again, those are discussions that need to be facilitated by the developer with the neighboring property owners in there. If it has to be a condition that we have to include in the adopting ordinance, we can and we will do so. But I think it would behoove the developer to engage with the adjoining property owners and talk about the placement of that screen wall and the landscaping and how that will be done through the construction process. And they're then taking up the public meeting to do so. But that's all I have in there. I'll transfer it over to the developer and the developers team. There were some other items in there that we haven't had a chance to discuss as we've been going through the development review. Remember, we've only seen this at the January 20th meeting in there. I did note about the masonry along the Dillman Road elevation, and that was incorrect. I just misread the table, but they do have close to 50% of brick along that elevation in there. But they also use, I need some clarification on that cement fiberboard. In this case, the fiberboard that they're looking to use. You know, the utility lines along Dillman Road and their height. You know, I can understand the visually not the most appealing thing, but whether those will be maintained and stay, whether additional parking can be brought in if the structures were moved closer to Dillman, but then you get closer to those utility poles. That in that cross-access easement, we need to ensure that the grades are going to work. There's no need for the city to acquire an easement only to find out that the grades don't accommodate any future use of that easement without having major implications either on the easement itself or the abutting property that would adjoin the easement. We want to make sure that the foundation exposure is limited in there. It wasn't very clear in the building plan elevations that the exterior finishes will be dropped down, limiting the exposure of concrete. There are several notes within the plans that say others are going to do this, so especially on the retaining walls. We need to know what they are at this point. I understand in the January set, you know, as we were trying to get everything put together, but it's been more than a month and we need to know what those materials are. The photometric plan was provided. It does identify the light fixture specs. You can Google them, but I would like the commission to get copies of what those fixtures look like, and also so we can post them, make them available to the public in there. And there were some concerns about the stormwater controls, primarily at the northwest corner of the site, because what you will see in that elevation, and it's pretty clear. Let's see here, this retaining wall that abuts the west property line. At the southernmost part, it will be several feet below grade, so the adjoining properties will be higher. As you get to the northern part of the development, this flips, and all of a sudden, the adjoining residential properties are at a lower grade than this drive and the retaining wall. And we want to make sure that that retaining wall, because it's going to have a drainage pipe, where that drainage pipe is going to release and how are they going to limit any exposure or transfer of the concentrated stormwater to the adjacent neighbor. So those are the things. I think these are all minor. I think that the direction of the development is going well. Interested to hear the commission's continued discussion on the density and design. But I overall think that this would be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. It would warrant rezoning to CC City Center District. I think outside of that, knowing what, that the county would authorize those interest points, MSD is good with the underground detention, and that we secure that cross-access easement, and then the remaining be compliant with the code sections. That's all I have, Chairman. I'd be glad to answer any additional questions in there. And again, if you're ready for the developers team afterwards.
Well, I think that was a very good report. I think Carol has a question for you. Go ahead, Carol.
I did want to just add something really. One of the things that I like about the concept behind the plan, and it certainly needs a lot more scrutiny, but the overall concept, I think, is one that definitely that furthers our own comprehensive plan and adds continued diversity of housing choices to Olivet, which I think we all would agree would definitely need.
I concur, Carol. I think that was well said. So, anybody else on the commission have any questions related to Carlos's report? No, Carlos. I think let's go ahead and bring on Hey, Carlos, do we want to go over the email from Indian Trails now, so that maybe some of those items can be incorporated into the discussion?
Okay. Again, the subdivision had issued a letter of comments at the January 20th meeting. Those were distributed as part of the packet. It was a little bit more formal. In that January 20th email, they talked about, and I'm just going to kind of summarize. I'll be glad to go into any of the specifics, but there's nothing different here than what I've noted. The concerns about the buffer and getting more specifics of the buffer. They had concerns about the density primarily with the traffic in there, and the illumination. And now we do have a photometric plan that has been provided. They had some concerns about the construction timeframes, and again, that's one of the things that we've addressed in here. The height, terrain, and survey, more specifics with how those slopes were working. I think the development team did an excellent job in providing a variety of different cross sections along that site. That were very helpful in terms of doing the review and the analysis in there. And then there was also some comments regarding the city's process of posting notice and such. And again, those we did acknowledge, and we did re-forward out notices regarding this development in there. The subsequent comments, again, go back to once these revisions were posted, was the buffer wall. Where is the buffer wall? Specific to chapter 428, concerns about the lighting and the photometric plan that's been provided, and then the stormwater and the drainage primarily at that northwest corner.
Good, Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, let's bring on the developers team. And That would be fantastic.
All right, Mr. Cohen, I'm going to promote you to panelist, and then I see three individuals with your party. Mr. Stevens, I saw somebody, Ms. Norris, and also Mr. Holmes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm actually in Florida celebrating my 60th birthday weekend. So I'm doing this from a cell phone, so it's a little hard for me to see the phone and the details that are provided here. But I am, of course, very familiar with everything. But I have my all-star team involved here. Everybody is ready to answer any questions regarding drainage. That'll be from Ryan from Bowles Engineering. Tyler, my lead architect, he's going to take over the presentation now, and I believe he has plenty of the answers that the staff and Carlos are looking for. And we look forward to really continuing the Douglas Properties involvement in the growth of the city of Olivet for the last 22 years.
Good. Thanks,
Okay.
Doug.
Right.
Thanks for bringing on your team, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Ms. Stevens, you should be able to share your monitor. So.
Okay. Oh, Tyler, if you don't mind, state your name and address for the record.
Sure.
I apologize.
No, it's good. I'm Tyler Stevens from Core 10 Architecture. Address is 4501 Lindell Boulevard, St. Louis, Missouri.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, you should be able to see the screen now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there are a number of points that Carlos brought up there, a number of questions that need to be answered. We're certainly happy to answer all these questions as much as we can. Some of them we would have provided information, but we just got the report from the staff about 3 hours before this meeting. So we were not able to provide all the information, but I think I can answer almost everything. Let's start with the parking discussion. And this is an enlarged site plan of the corner. A couple different things going on here. It was brought up last time, this idea that we needed to provide more guest parking. I would like to remind everyone that we are required to park 2 cars per unit inside the, as far as their actual parking, which we have in the basement. And then we also have an additional 2 cars for every unit located right behind the garage. So we're providing guest parking in the account of 70 guest parking spaces already. I know that's not exactly what you all were looking for, but I do want to point that out because these, as a reminder, these are small townhouse units. The public space in them on the first floor where someone might be entertaining is all of 900 square feet. This is not the type of house where you throw a very large party and have lots of cars. So that's just something as a background. However, we did look at the recommendation of putting parking along this southern edge. The strip would hold about 5 cars in terms of guest parking spaces. There's enough room in terms of the width and the distance to the property line, but the issue has to do with water runoff and storm management. We are providing a number of green spaces. You can see on this plan, the green located everywhere to capture stormwater runoff per MSD, and adding those 5 parking spaces would put us over some thresholds. So we didn't feel like that was a good way to go. There are grading issues, but I think it really has more to do with the water runoff. So what we did instead is, if you'll look in the back here, and this is just a portion of the site plan, but in the back here, there's an area where we say it's mail is delivered. This is a requirement of the post office to have centralized mail delivery. But we have the ability to have a little pull off at each one of these mail stations. And there are 3 of them in the development. That pull off widens the road and allows 2 cars to pull off and park there. This works for a number of things. They could temporarily get out and grab their mail if they wanted. A lot of times people parking will be picking up someone They're not necessarily coming to stay to visit, but they're picking up a person, or an Uber drops somebody off, or even a delivery from UPS. And these little pull-in stations provide 6 parking spaces along that back road, which I think is a better way to handle it than adding to the impervious area here on the southern edge. So that's what we want to point out for there. With regard to the cross-access easement, before I go for that, just pointing out those other guest parking spaces occur right here. There are 2 cars behind each unit. So if you had people coming over, you could have 2 cars of guest parking. A number of times you'd even ask your neighbor, hey, can I park in your guest spot? That's just part of communal living in an urban environment. The access easement here on the north, I really think this is just a misunderstanding. Carlos had mentioned that we were no longer providing it. That was not our intention. We've not changed anything with regard to this road other than graphically. There was some concern about headlights coming in last time and kind of shining into this house on the corner. So graphically, we changed our retaining wall to go straight across there and to provide a little bit of blocking for that. And you'll see that in the detail sections here in a minute. And so I think it was just misinterpreted that we were not going to continue that road across. It's really just a matter of, we took the retaining wall across to block the headlights. So totally our intention to provide that. With regard to building heights, we do fall within, as I understand, the 45 feet is the COR height limit in the staff report. We are at 37.2, so we are below the height limit. And the height limit, it's a little deceiving. Carlos showed the picture that showed the backs with the garages, and it looks like a 3-story building. That's only because this garage area, that driveway is sunken into the ground by 10 feet. So it's below grade. Everything from grade up is 2 stories. So that 3rd story happens below grade. The only place where that is not true is on this northernmost building, and that's just due to the fall of the site. This road, the access road, comes in low. And so on that street, this face would be 3 stories tall. That's the only place where that happens. And I'll show you some details of that as we go. So the discussion last time had to do with a number of things. One is this idea of the master plan of cross access, not just for cars, but for pedestrians. And we focused in on this center station right here, because it really has to do with future and connecting the region together to a city center. We've got City Hall right across the street. And so this is a great pedestrian access point. And so we took that area there, and I'll blow it up here in a second, and wanted to build that out a little bit more. The other things that we're going to show you have to do with, these are section cuts all around the site, where we're going to show you what this wall looks like at each one of these. There's 7 different marks there, and then 1 on the north. I think that will explain a lot of what we're talking about. But before I go to that, it's good to point out I've added in the houses that are to the west here at the top. And the grades go up and down on this whole back section. So these houses are all at different heights. We'll show you how they relate to our buildings. But the thing I want to point out is here on the very end, you'll notice these 2 last houses, they get closer to the property line. And that's due to the fact that there's a cul-de-sac at the end of the road here. And so these houses are bending around it. That makes them a little bit closer, more vulnerable, let's say. But it's also the spot where the site falls the most. So these 2 houses on the end are at the lowest point of everything. So it does get a little exaggerated right there, but that's due to the existing topography and the way that cul-de-sac is made. With regard to the access easement, I think the greater challenge is not the grade. It is low, but you can always fill that, raise it. put the road across, so it wouldn't be a grade issue. The bigger challenge is really this house is right in the way. So that house would certainly need to be purchased as part of any sort of future access easement. So that's just good for everybody to know. So I'm going to move forward now to these various points. The first is this pedestrian access. Carlos pointed out that there was some inconsistencies. I'll just let you know that the architecture plan is what drives the rest of the team. We've put this change into place. The other team members did not have time to incorporate it in their drawings, just in the turnaround, but this is the way it's going forward. This is the official. The plan down here at the bottom is blown up. You can see what we're doing is taking the sidewalk and widening it, creating a small little plaza. And then if you look at there's a retaining wall that happens along Dealman. You can see this in the elevation here. The retaining wall needs to step different heights as we go along the street. And this point where the stairs come through, it gives us a good opportunity to transition that step in the wall. We're bringing the retaining wall down low at the stairs and creating planter beds on either side of the stairs. Those low walls would be at bench height. So this really serves as little benches that people could sit on, congregate on this widening of the sidewalk. And then the landscape planter boxes behind it all transition this wall as it goes up the stairs. So I think that's a pretty effective way to incorporate it and break up the wall at the same time. You can see street trees going down, and then all of this leads to the gap between the buildings, which is that pedestrian access. I'm going to go through a series of sections now, mostly focusing on this west property line. This first one is large scale. I'll zoom in more later, but this is just to give you an idea of the grade change. If you look here on the far right, you'll notice these are the houses to the west. And I said these top two are how most of the street is. That's the general height and setback of most of the street. The bottom one is that last house at the very northern edge where you can see it gets closer to the property line, and it's lower as well. But you can see how much grade falls as you go from the southern edge to the northern edge. All these yards get progressively shorter. That is compared to our buildings here directly across. So on the high end, the roofs are almost equal of the house and ours, even though we're an extra story taller. As you work down to the northern end, then the roof gets considerably lower compared. And this street is lower, so that's the 3-story elevation that I was pointing out that happens only at that northernmost building. The rest of the buildings are all like this top view, 2 stories on the entry side, and then the driveway is sunken below grade to get down to the lower level. This box here actually on the left should have been shaded dark because that's all dirt, showing how that's below grade. So hopefully that helps you to understand what's going on here with the grades. Walking through them, this is starting at the southern end and going to the north. So there's a variety of conditions. You'll see the 10-foot buffer that's required, and that has to do with the distance from our street and wall back to the property line. So that's a landscape buffer. It's going to have some slope. It's going to have a retaining wall that varies in height as it goes along. It was our original intention that retaining wall would be our screen buffer to the houses to the west. However, working with staff, we understand that the 6-foot tall screen is more the intention of what is required. So we're showing here where that would occur, which is at the property line. This is be like a privacy fence that runs along the property line. It's an additional 6 feet above the wall. And here, this wall at this location shows it about 3 feet high. That helps to shade all the headlights of any cars coming in, sink the cars down below grade so that when people are looking, they see over them. That was our original intent, but of course, adding this screen to it they won't see anything in terms of that car. So I'm going to walk you through these one at a time, and you can just see how it changes. They're all relative to the height of the building. So this is from the south. The next one is where the driveway occurs. You can see that the road in the back has sloped down. The trash enclosure is built into that buffer zone, and it allows the trash to be completely hidden by the retaining wall as it sinks. And this will happen at each one of the garage driveways. And then there's that 6-foot screen fence at the top. Now, I will point out that the 10-foot buffer, when it comes to the trash enclosure, does get smaller because we're going around the trash enclosure. So I'm calculating let's just say it's roughly half of it, that you would have 5 feet. That's still enough room to continue the landscaping behind and then have the screen wall. So those trash enclosures are a very minor part of that entire western edge. In fact, I've calculated them they're each 10 foot wide over the total distance. It equals 5.8% of the entire length of the western edge would be less than the 10 foot. So it's a minor amount and can be easily landscaped. Continuing on to the north, you see the wall changes in height a little bit. This one's a little bit more flat. The next one down has the trash enclosure again lower. And then as we move to the north, now the neighboring properties are starting to get lower than our development. Still the retaining wall is facing our side though. And then when we go to the last trash enclosure, it's not quite as deep. Now we're on the northernmost house, and this is where the yard is below ours, as Carlos pointed out. So what we're doing is we're taking our retaining wall, and it faces the other way, but we're going to double it in width. You can see it's fatter here, and that allows us to raise it in height on our side, so that it's double-sided. The purpose of that is to block the headlights of the cars coming through. And in this particular case, we don't need the screen fence because this wall is already 6 feet tall. That's that northern drive. You can see the 3-story structure there. Moving around to the north edge, then we have a similar condition where to the north, those properties are lower. And so here, the wall again is facing the other way. So we don't need the screen wall because that is the screen, 6 feet high. And in terms of drainage, I know that was one of the questions. We want to make sure that drainage doesn't go on to neighboring properties. Our site drains from west to east towards Dealman. It all slopes in that direction. So all drainage is actually coming towards you in this view. And we have curbs plus the retaining wall at top lip. So water is not going to go off of the site to the north. It's all going to come to the east. Out to the front. So I don't think that the drainage onto neighboring properties should be too much of a concern. That's it in terms of those sections. The last thing I will add is just a couple of comments regarding the various items that Carlos brought up. The elevations, he pointed out there is a correction there. We have a larger percentage of brick, but then when you consider openings are also, glass, the main thing is we have a lot of glass. And so glass is obviously an acceptable material. If you were to combine the amount of glass and the amount of brick that we have, we're well over. The note about materials done by others, I pointed this out at the last meeting, but I'll reiterate it. That is a note that civil engineers put on their drawings that indicate they are not designing the retaining walls. When they say by others, they mean designed by others. Those retaining walls are all traditional landscape block retaining walls. That's the material. It will be, we can provide examples of those materials, but it's pretty common kind of stuff. And the by others just means it's designed by someone else. It doesn't mean that somebody outside of this development team is going to build it later. It's all going to be built part of the property and what's happening there. I think that I've covered pretty much all of those questions except for things regarding finance and scheduling, and I'll let Doug answer those questions. But before he gets to that, do we have any questions from you all in regards to these architectural items?
Chairman?
Sorry about that. I accidentally muted myself because of a dog. So does anybody on the commission have any questions for Tyler? Tyler, I do have just a couple quick questions, and maybe you've already addressed this before and I just forgot. Where you have the yards on the west and they're sloping, into the property, and you have the retaining wall that's there, I'm assuming you're going to have some sort of drainage, so around your system to address the runoff that they have from their properties that likely goes into your property.
Well, these kind of landscape walls are sort of self-draining. They have a drain tile that's built into the backside of the wall in the dirt. It collects any moisture coming through. They usually weep through the wall in terms of specific points along the wall. All of that then gets picked up in our drives to our, stuff that we have to take into consideration on our property. But if there are other specific drainage, elements besides that the civil engineer wants to answer, I believe Ryan is on the line here too.
It just seemed like some fairly significant slopes, so I wasn't sure if how much water that would be actually flowing over that wall or through the wall.
Ryan, would you like to address that?
Yeah, this is Ryan from Voles Incorporated, 10849 Indian Head Industrial Boulevard, St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah, Tyler, I think that was pretty accurate with what we plan on doing. Obviously, we try to prevent as much offsite water per MSD requirements coming onto our site as possible. But as everyone knows, that's, you're going to have to handle some offsite water. There will be a drain system in place, and we will account for that, whatever water we have to take on. I would like to note that it's the offsite to the west does not go specifically west to east. There is kind of a high centralized north to south on the site. So much of the water will be going, as it currently does, to the north or to the south of our development. But whatever does get into the back of the wall system will be handled with that drain tile. So I think that's
Good. Thanks for clarifying.
Ryan, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes, Doug.
Ryan, can you mention to the commission your discussions with MSD and how it works when you kind of bounce ideas off them, they bounce ideas off you, and then you go to your desk and kind of implement them. So there has been plenty of involvement with them. There's nothing official yet, but can you walk them through that process?
Yeah, MSD's got a conceptual review process, which we did on this project. It's not a requirement by MSD, but in instances where there is, a site such as this where we've got questions, it gets a little more complex. We do recommend, which Doug has agreed, that when we went through the conceptual design process, and they pretty much look at the overall intent of the project and how the stormwater sanitary, the MSD involvement is going to be handled. So we've went through that upfront process where we'll give them preliminary numbers as far as imperviousness and stormwater, and then they'll kind of look through their records and go through and see if there's any downstream issues, both sanitary and storm, and provide their feedback. So they've got an overall understanding of what we're trying to do with the stormwater as far as the underground detention. And we've had to do a sanitary analysis already on this site, which just came back good. There's no sanitary capacity issues downstream. So they're well aware of what our intent is with the stormwater. So the next step would be, once we kind of nail down or finalize our design to go back through with a formal submittal and work specifically on their MSD permits.
Good, good. Tyler, I have another question. It was about some of those areas where your property is higher in elevation than the surrounding. How high will that wall become?
The highest point there on that northwest corner, where the neighbors are the lowest, I measured it out at about 7 feet in height.
Do you guys need to provide any protection to make sure somebody doesn't go over the edge, or you get a car that goes straight, through there?
Well, yeah, as a reminder, again, we're taking the wall up taller than the street to block the headlights. So it actually acts as a
Jersey barrier.
guardrail, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. How tall will that be?
We have it at about 3 feet right now. Just high enough to get to the hood of a car.
Okay.
As long as it's not a monster truck.
Right. Will that be sufficient enough to deal with the headlights, coming from a distance? I actually don't know. So,
yeah, if you go, 3 feet is about up to your waist, in most people. And if you walk up to the front of your car and notice where the headlights are in relationship to that, they're usually not higher than that.
And then the density of the landscaping, will that be, how dense will that landscaping be? Because if you have gaps and stuff, would you get headlights going through that?
Well, if the wall is blocking the headlights, then you shouldn't have that, but it going in the upward direction, I guess, shining.
That's what I'm,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. The landscaping there right now, we're following the city's requirements in terms of buffer landscaping, but at that northern street, as I understand, as that's where most of the traffic is coming, we can certainly put in an evergreen, screen hedge of arborvitae that would be very thick across there that nothing would go through.
Will there be speed bumps on that road?
No, the back stretch as it goes down the west has so much topography. It's going like this. You couldn't possibly drive it really fast.
And that's to change from the garage areas up to the mailboxes kind of in the middle, right?
That's right.
Brian, you seem puzzled by that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just thinking of which way we're talking about, because I agree with you, 3 feet, then 6 feet, but if there were speed bumps, I was worried it would, just keep pushing cars up sometimes, and I wouldn't want headlights shining in, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Oh, go ahead, Tim.
I just want to go back to the parking again. So first you're providing the 2 mailbox spaces on each end of that. Are those full spaces that are going to go and not be part of the fire line, or are you going to be half in and half out of the regular drive?
We currently had them coming in about 5 feet. So a standard parking parallel is 8 feet, I suppose. So that is 3 feet difference. We can pull them in to a full 8 feet if that's considered the requirement. It just makes them a little harder to get in and out of.
And do you, per the U.S. Postal Service, do you have to have access? Do they have to have access in front of there? Are you going to lose a space during the day?
Well, when the mail truck comes to put stuff in the box, you will lose a space, but the mail truck would only be there. They don't walk to each individual house. They just go right to that box at the plaza, which is why they require it that way, so that they can do it faster. So only during the time that the mail truck is putting mail in the box, yes.
So how is a tenant going to use that space if they have to be gone during a certain time during the day?
Well, the tenant would typically use their own spaces. It's
Yeah,
more
For
for,
the people, the Uber drivers and
Yeah.
delivery drivers and Amazon and all those guys?
As a reminder, each unit has 4 parking spaces. So each unit can accommodate 4 of their own cars. They could put 2 in the garage and 2 in the driveway behind it. So there's not a need for a unit tenant or a resident to park there on any regular basis. It would be for, in case there was a guest coming over, which would typically be at night, or some, when
How about Amazon when they bring their vans in? Where are
Yeah.
they gonna go?
Amazon parks wherever they want, and they'll park in the fire lane every time, I guarantee you.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to avoid, is that we don't want people parking in the fire lane and moving. That
Well,
you guys need to figure that part out to make sure that there's a place for the Uber drivers and the Amazon and everybody to go to.
That's what I'm
Big
saying.
brown truck.
That is what we are providing. We're providing those pull-in spaces. We can put signage up that says no parking. We can do all that all day long, but we can't stand out there and make sure they don't, and they will. This happens on every development. I mean, they park in the middle of the street. So we're giving them the spots to go to. We're providing a space for them. I can't tell you that I can guarantee you they will use them, but we are providing them for them.
So they could drive down the street and park in the garage, behind the garage,
They could.
and drop it off at the back in the garage of the units. They're not
Yes.
going to find the front door.
Yeah, it depends on where people want their, usually you tell I know at our house, we tell our UPS delivery guy where we like packages, front porch or back porch. And so each person's probably going to have a different preference to that.
So I have a question. Let's say, you've got a repair truck coming in to do work on a unit, maybe something slightly bigger than a pickup truck. Where would they go to service one of these units? Would they go to that parking spot and then have to haul equipment, or would they have to go into one of these alleyways? I mean, it looks kind of tight if you have to get a service vehicle back in there.
So the dimensions of that driveway area, and that's where they should go. I mean, that's access to the garage where they can open the garage door and get right in with any equipment. And the dimensions of all that are the same as any standard parking lot, with the drive aisle and then parking spaces on either side. So if they could park in a grocery store parking lot, then they could park here. But that's where the intent of any service vehicles would be, for the unit behind the garage.
Would there be enough vertical head clearance under there? Because those 2 extra spots are kind of underneath a deck, correct?
Yes, and the height there is based on a standard garage door of 7 foot. So I do realize that limits some things that are, I don't know if they had ladders.
Yeah, because I mean, and that's where I was concerned, because if you have a service van that's a little higher and they pull back in there, they won't be able to turn around. It's basically like pull in, back out kind of thing, which might be fine, but.
Well, let me describe a scenario that happens at my house all the time, because I live on an alley, and everybody shares the alley. It's a public street. And when service vehicles come, they park in the alley and they block the alley so that no one can get through. And it happens periodically. And so I'm coming to work and I raise my garage door and I need to get out, and there's a service truck there that's serving my neighbor. And so I walk out to him and I say, "Excuse me, I need to get out. Can you move your truck?" And he says, "Sure." And he backs it up, and then I pull out and go to work, and then he pulls back to where he was. Those kinds of things happen. Ideally, there's a giant spot with lots of overhead clearance for service trucks to park in every unit, but that's just not really how the world works. It usually isn't a problem.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about maybe like, you know, like one place for that, not one for every unit.
But they could park in that mail slot if they wanted, if they wanted to carry their equipment that far.
Okay.
But I doubt they would.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So if they're parked in the mail spot and the mailman comes, they're just going to bypass the mail delivery that day.
Well, there are 3 different areas, so I don't think there would be 3 vehicles parked in all, well, 3 different ones containing room for 2. So I don't think that all those vehicles, even if somebody parks in the middle, you'd have to have 3 vehicles at the same time, filling all those spots for there to be no place to park.
Guys, I think this is actually a significant improvement from where it was before, at least having these extra 2 spots kind of for each group of buildings. And we are kind of going back and looking at kind of worst case scenarios, and it's hard to predict. I mean, it really is. And I always kind of go back to Mike Saunders, where he keeps saying, you know, we need to get rid of, you know, all the pavement and stuff. So I think this is a pretty good compromise to have that in place. Is it perfect? There's probably going to be a few days where it's not perfect. So
I will tell you, I will mention one thing in all of my activity from potential suitors, and I've shown them complete site plan, complete guest parking. When I say 4 spots, 2 in the garage, 2 in the driveway, I've had 0 pushback from any customers, potential customers. No one has ever brought up anything that is detrimental regarding parking.
Doug, let me ask you a question. If by chance there was a problem with parking after you put in these extra 2 places, you know, per spot, could you put in, you know, along that south roadway, pervious pavement? You know, like
I don't know. I don't know if that would solve anything. I don't know if, you know, Ryan would be the one to address that, because I don't know if that's part of the problem or not. That's kind of above my pay grade. Ryan, chime in on that if you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did look pretty extensively about into the southern green space area to the south of that southern drive that you're referencing. And there was a couple issues, and I apologize, I cut out earlier when I think Tyler was kind of going through some of the items on that area. But so there is the sewer going through there with an easement to MSD. It's a public sewer. Looking at the grades, the topography over there, there's a couple items. So you've got the Jiffy Lube to the south with the hillside coming down. So if we were to extend the parking area, the pavement, we would lose the space we need to tie grades back in without adding an additional retaining wall. And adding an additional retaining wall there is not an option due to the MSD easement. They won't allow a retaining wall over their sewer. So that's the first issue we've got with that. The second issue deals with slopes as well and grades. I mentioned earlier that MSD doesn't like you to handle offsite water within your private stormwater detention. So we're using that area right now to capture the stormwater coming onto our site from the south in an inlet, and then rather than taking it into our private storm system, we're bypassing our private storm system because we are able to capture it before it gets into our system. So if we were to take all that offsite water into our private system, the underground detention facilities would just get astronomically bigger, and you know, cost wise, that's not really you know, within the project. And secondly, MSD doesn't like you to take offsite water. So those 2 items is kind of where we, adding additional parking to the south is not really an option at this point for us in the design. Does that kind of make sense how I described that, or any other questions?
Yeah, no, I get it. The only thing with that retaining wall, wouldn't that retaining wall be on the south side of the sewer line?
Um,
But is there a minimum distance between?
yeah, well, it's basically the 10-foot wide easement that sewer has running through there. You know, we can't,
Yeah.
it goes all the way to the edge of the property line. So there's no space between the easement and the property line.
Okay.
Also, you know, putting that wall over there, we've got to allow space on the backside of the wall for the geogrid. So that wall can't go, you know, right on the property line. It's got to be inside. If it's a 5-foot wall, typically we allow 5 feet at a minimum behind the wall for the geogrid. So it's just, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Doug, did you want to finish off or talk a little bit more about some of the financing and scheduling?
Well, sure. I think,
Chairman, before we go into that, and again, I do want to hear an overview or summary, but it would be good to have something in writing. That way, you know, not just the public that's been staying on till now, but to have something posted in there. It can be simple, but I think we need, we want to hear the overview, but I'd like to see it, you know, written out.
you're talking about the loan commitment letter.
No, just a general pro forma of the overall project costs.
Why is that pertinent? I'm curious. I mean,
There's
because
a-
I'm not asking for any tips or anything like that. Why is that a public number?
It's an investment in the community. It also affects on how the permitting costs will be in place in there. So I mean, it's a simple, yeah.
Right. I understand about the permitting portion. I do that with every house, how the cost is. But why would that be a public?
We're not looking for
internally
your.
in my-
Mhm. Yeah, it's not a question about your financing. It's more of the project cost.
How the project costs?
Correct.
Yeah, Doug, I think he's not actually asking for a pro forma in terms of the, you know, financial performance of the project, but more just the construction cost estimates.
I have no problem. I mean, I do that for every house, so I would have no problem when it comes to putting that on the application. That's to me standard procedure.
But unlike every house, this is a little bit larger project, and we'd like to get it out as early as possible. So.
Okay. But and then are you including my financing commitment from my bank in there as well? Is that something?
No,
you'd like to see?
it's not necessary. I think the overall, you know, for us as a city, to note the amount, you know, similar to what you've asked me for, what is the investment going on in other projects? What are the overall construction costs and things of that nature? And it's good for the city to have, and it's a good way to promote your property. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get it. I'll get that to you next week.
No problem.
Okay.
I mean, I think that I'd like to think we've answered most, if not all, the questions. We're surely open to answering anything upon a discussion now. We're still available. We're not going anywhere. So, you know, if any, I guess now is when you ask the public to speak. I don't know how the
Exactly.
rules are.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the next step.
Well,
Okay.
Chairman, there are a couple of things that I just want to make sure that we're all clear that are still necessary for further review. Again, the code has a requirement for the buffer. I'm hearing that there's going to be encroachment within that buffer, and I think it's reasonable given the grade elevations. And if they're requesting an amendment to the code, to give the commission that authority, or if it's going to be a variance procedure, I need to know, because we need to get that process moving in there. The other thing there's several finishes that, yes, we do want to see. One is those walls in there, if they're going to be Herculean walls, which then it makes sense about the geogrid, or are they going to be concrete retaining walls, which then there really isn't a geogrid in that process. Or I know there was a discussion today with another developer, maybe they're going to be those wooden soldier course walls that we see in Olive Crossing. So it'd be nice to see what wall is being proposed. The other thing is regarding the light fixtures. And then also, as we were talking about guardrails, there is a significant drop in the north side of the property. And I would assume that there's going to be some type of guardrail placement there that abuts Castlegate, because there's a good height in there in that cross section between those. So there's going to be something. And then if it's just a standard Jersey barrier, then the visual would be sufficient. But I am interested in the retaining wall materials along Dillman Road on the public way. And then also from the engineer to, some assurances that the slopes for those driveways between the townhouses conform with the city's code. With what the maximum percentage is.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, Carlos, are you done?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the last thing, there are some finishes in here where it's a little bit hard to tell if whether that exterior finish is coming down to the grade or it's going to be an exposure. I don't think it's an exposure. But what the goal here is to do is, I would like the commission to consider that when it approves the master development plan, that we're in the process to approve the individual development plan for those buildings too. It can come in at a later step, but it would be more efficient and functional, I think, for the developer if we can get it all done in one process.
I think we can give you those answers now. I think Ryan and Tyler, we had some conversations earlier, and Ryan and Tyler chime in, and I think you're going to answer some of the questions that Carlos brought up as we speak, right?
Well, and it's not about the answer; it's about the plan itself being reflective of the answer.
Okay. I see.
All right.
Well, I can tell you, in terms of the plan itself, what we submitted, the materials do go down to the grade. I'm not sure where the comment about exposed foundations comes from. And the retaining wall, I've said several times, it's concrete landscape block. So it's not wood soldier piles, and it's not a poured concrete wall. It's a concrete landscape block stacked.
So yeah, so looking at those modular block walls, whatever the person on that team is going to be, they need to come up and show us.
Carlos, don't we have something too where if it goes over a certain height, they're supposed to be staggered? Or
yes.
So, and I think you said we went up. Tyler, what was the tallest section?
I think 7 feet is the tallest section, and what you're talking about is standard engineering of block walls that's governed by code, irregardless of your own codes. So that's where the GeoGrid comes in. That's what all of what Ryan was talking about.
Okay. So you'll be able to provide a little bit more details on how that's going to be done.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, it's all part of the construction documents that has to meet code. So all those details are in there.
Good.
But again, there's a little bit discommunication here. We want to see what they are as part of this process. I'm not looking for the construction specs, but if you have the stone, the color, the tone, the texture.
Okay, I just wasn't aware that this was architectural review, but I mean,
well, if you guys want to come back for the architectural review component again, That's your call. I think it's more efficient to get it all done at once.
Yeah. Well,
Can
I
we,
agree.
can we have the council internally approve the block wall, or do we have to go back to this board?
The council is not
I mean, not the council, I mean, you.
No, I think that's the role of the commission.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I know in the past there's been permits or issues granted subject to the internal staff, meaning, I guess you, approving the component of the material, and they didn't really trust what you're gonna say, but I'll leave that all up to you.
Okay.
Sharon?
Yeah, go ahead, Carol. I'm sorry.
Doug, I am sure that, the adjacent neighbors have probably still have lots of questions. And is there any plan that you have to meet with those neighbors and show them the designs today?
I mean, I've spoken to the trustee a few weeks back. I mean, he has my number. I'm always available. I mean, I generally would wait until I get some correspondence from somebody to answer some questions that someone may have, but I mean, I'm open 24/7.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll probably have some trustees on board when we take on public comments. So we'll have that opportunity, at this point, but then maybe if there's a need, Doug could schedule something later with them if that's necessary. Okay, Carlos, unless anybody else from the commission has any specific questions or comments right now. Otherwise, I think we'll take on some public comments at this point in time.
Okay, Chairman, and we're set for the public comments. I'm going to transfer Jeannie Light, promote you to panelist. Ms. Light, if you can just state your name and address. Have your both your video and monitor available, since we're doing a Zoom meeting, would be appreciated.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
can.
Sorry about
Go
that.
ahead.
Okay, I'm Jean Light and I'm on the Board of Trustees here at Castlegate Villas Drive. I live at 1234 Castlegate Villas Drive. So,
Good. Thank you.
I just want to make a comment that we have been anticipating this development for some time, and we look forward to not only it being visually enhancing the area, but also as a result, enhancing and maintaining the property values at Castlegate Villas. I've talked to Doug Cohen several times, and I've talked to also owners here at Castlegate, and we fully support the development.
Good. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Okay, Carlos, the next one.
All right. If there's anybody that would like to speak before the commission, you can show your hand and I'll transfer you over. All right, bear with me 1 second, Chairman. All right, Mr. Kalina, I see your hand raised. I am going to transfer you over. Bear with me 1 second as I'm trying to reorganize on the other list. All right, Mr. Kalina, you should be transferred over to as a panelist. Again, if you can state your name and address, and then we would appreciate it if you have video available to have that on.
Okay, just 1 second. Can you see and hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Welcome to the modern world. Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
Good.
Eric, unfortunately, is unable to attend. I believe Mohammed may be here, who would probably want to comment also. I wasn't sure who specifically from Indian Trails, who else was here. I'm Alan Kalina, 1120 Indian Trails Drive. That would be, of course, Olivet. So if Mohammed is here, I just want to make sure I didn't cut him off. I have a couple of questions. I would appreciate some further clarity. To be honest with you, there seems to be some pretty drastic differentials regarding the buffer handling, depending upon specifically where it is in the development in conjunction to which one of our various properties. And obviously our elevations change fairly radically as the elevations on the development properties drop off pretty radically from the north to the south. So I guess I'm curious because of that, is there going to be are we going to be altering the elevations of your strip of property that you're going to be developing? Are you going to be raising, for example, that southernmost lot to bring it up more in alignment with the rest of the lots?
Tyler, can you answer that question?
I can to a degree. Ryan would be probably better to answer, but in general, yes, the site is a balanced site across, and what that means is that the lower levels are filled with some of the higher peaks. But that by no means does that mean that the site is going to be flat. So I don't mean to purvey that, but
Right.
yes, those low-lying bottom areas on the south would be filled in. And then you can see, as when I was showing the retaining wall along the western edge, where the grade is up higher on some of your properties, then our lot would be dug down a little bit. So the retaining wall holds it. And so we're sinking down approximately 4-ish feet. And then on the far northern edge, it's the opposite. Some of that dirt goes there to raise our property up above that low-lying area on the north.
Out of curiosity, I looked at the most current plans, and when you were showing the side views, which showed your townhouse strips, as it were, against various specific properties and how they leveled off, it looked like you skipped the area behind my house and the house one house further to the north when you were showing those side angles that leveled off the houses with your townhouses. Did I misread that?
I'm sorry, we did not do one for every house. So we picked 7 locations along the western edge that had to do with the driveways coming out and the sidewalk between the units coming out. So those were the locations where we did them. If that didn't hit your specific house, then I'm sorry.
Because the level of our house compared to the property that you're going to be building on for the second and third house going from south to north is substantially different than any of the other ones that you did in fact do the side view of, for whatever that's worth. Regarding the buffering, I'm a little vague in the specifics of that because it seems to change so wildly based on elevation, property, house to house, townhouse strip to townhouse strip. So I'm just trying to get a grip of what's going to happen. I keep hearing 10 feet from your property line. Am I wrong? My understanding is that there is a 2-foot easement that has to be in play from your property line going east. Is that correct?
I am not aware of any 2-foot.
Well, for utility access and the like, is that not correct, Carlos?
An easement is like a private contractual overlay onto a property ground, and it could be within a buffer. Is that what you're asking?
My understanding is that,
the
for
buffer,
example,
the buffer is measured 10 feet from the property line.
Okay, so 10 feet from the property line. So starting essentially at the property line, you're going to have a strip of landscaping, a lot of arborvitae, it looks like, correct?
So what you will see on your side is a 6-foot high privacy fence.
And what is a privacy fence specifically? What's it made out of? What does it look like?
Well,
it's
like
a solid stone or a stone falk
It's a
buffer.
wall?
It's a wall, yes. It's
So it's not a
it-
fence, it's a wall.
correct.
What do you mean? What do you mean by stone, though? I was under the impression this was it's a screen, so it's like a solid.
It's a screen, and there's various illustrations of what that screen type would be in chapter 428. It would mimic a masonry wall, kind of like a barrier. The buffer serves both for the separation, but also to mitigate noise, screening, and those items. So it's not a wooden fence. It's not a chain link fence. It's not a vinyl fence. It's a screen wall. We do allow a polymer to be used as long as it mimics a masonry finish. And there's several examples along the corridor that have been recently constructed.
Okay, so when I'm looking out I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I want to be very clear about this. Because building a masonry wall on a concrete foundation for 684 feet of the site of the length of the site, 6 foot high is not in the budget. That is an extremely expensive wall. So I don't know that that's what you're talking about. You're talking about a fake stone like liner on a fence. That's kind of a question.
We can show you. We allow an alternative other than masonry in there that's been approved by various Department of Transportation in there, and I can send you a sample.
And would the neighbors? Maybe I should ask this of Mr. Klein or Kalina. Sorry.
No problem.
Would you rather see a faux plastic stone fence or a wood fence that's stained and?
Well, the code isn't there for an option. So if you're looking to change the code again, you need to be clear to let us know if we need to start on some amendments, because this is going to delay the process.
And thus my concern in any discussions that I've witnessed regarding this buffer, it seems the pieces of the puzzle seem to change. I just don't understand why, and I'm going to use the word concrete, but in answer to your question, would I be excited about looking out my patio door and seeing a concrete 6 foot tall concrete wall in my backyard? No. Would I rather see, some kind of wooden fence? Probably, but again, the concrete wall would do a better job of buffering noise and sound and lights than a wooden fence would. And I'm obviously concerned about those issues in my backyard, but I'm hoping that we can further define it. So when I look out my patio door, based on where you're at now, at your property line, there is going to be a 6 foot tall, you called it a
screen
fence, which sounds more like it's a screen wall, but it's not a screen at all. I don't know.
Carlos, why don't you clarify what's written in the codes?
Correct.
Okay,
and instead of that's why in the code we specifically used illustrations to articulate what the requirement is. And what I'll do is I'll show you one of the most recent ones that was constructed, a visual, and it's going to look something like that. That's why we'd like to have the details in there. Bear with me 1 second.
Obviously, from our perspective on Indian Trails, we want to know what's happening to what used to be a really nice view of, frankly, many years ago, I'd look out my patio door and there was an apple orchard there. Now I realize things change, and hasn't been the case for a long time. And for too long now, once the properties back there were demolished, I've, for all intents and purposes, been living on Dealman. But yes, it would be nice for us to know what we're going to see back there. And obviously you've got landscaping. I've got lots of arborvitaes. They die like crazy. How are you going to water them? Are you going to have a sprinkler system built into that strip of landscaping?
All landscape areas are required by code to be sprinklered. Yes, sir.
Okay, so then we've got another issue with sprinklers back there, and how is that, is this the kind of wall you're talking about, Carlos?
Yes, sir. That's one example.
So that's the one next to the mobile gas station.
That is correct.
So that's why I keep calling it a fence, because technically this is not a wall. It doesn't have a continuous foundation under it. It's a series of poles.
Panels.
Yeah, and panels like a fence.
Okay, so that's what, essentially, that's what we're going to be seeing out our patio doors. And at what point in time in the course of your construction, how does the buffer fit into play from the time that you start your initial your foundations, and I guess your one building actual construction? At what point in time are we going to have the full tilt buffer?
We'll request a written schedule from the developer that will identify that. I would assume that your preference would be the sooner the better in the process.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to live on a construction site for 5 years.
Understand, but I think we'll get a schedule from the developer put in place that at least gives us a tentative timeline of what comes in first.
Okay, so the bottom line is a wall like this, theoretically, if not actually, is going to be on the property line. If I were to install a wooden fence on my property, Carlos, how far off of that property line would I need to install that fence?
Right now, under the current code requirements, and this is an issue we're having on all types of fences. Fences, of course, always make good neighbors. Is that you could put a fence up against a fence. What's on your property is on your property.
Theoretically, I don't need a 2-foot easement from my property line up onto my backyard.
I'm not aware of a 2-foot easement.
Okay, because I've always been under the impression, based on fences that exist already, that was a rule that was in play. You couldn't build a fence on your property line, but apparently you can. Okay, well, I appreciate, I would appreciate more specific detail about what we're going to see looking out in our backyards, what's going to be back there. Obviously, the time frame would be very.
Mr. Kalina?
Yeah,
I've given you a lot of leniency on time and stuff because.
Okay, well, I'm going to say one last thing then, for what it's worth. Thank you very much. I didn't realize that asking questions and somebody else answering came into my time. But regarding the parking that keeps coming up and you all bring up, there's not enough parking here. Why don't we just call a spade a spade? There's simply not enough parking that's going to be happening on these properties. 3-bedroom townhouses could easily have 3 cars. People parking in their driveways is problematic. There's so many vehicles going up and down any given street and dropping things off these days. For what it's worth, I tend to agree with a lot of what I'm hearing, that the parking is in fact an issue. The last question I had, for whatever it's worth, was about the lighting and how that was going to affect us. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Lighting?
Tyler, do you want to just, while we're switching between members, maybe just kind of go over what the lighting design is going to be, or what you're planning on?
I would if I could explain it, but I can't.
Okay.
Amanda is on the line here, and she might know more than I do about lighting.
Yeah. Could maybe pull up that sheet as well. Give me a second. My slow computer, I think it's booting up.
I will say, while she's pulling that up, that the design intent of the lighting is very much like a streetscape. We're talking about not like a parking lot. We don't really have a parking lot per se that creates a lot of light spill off, but more street lights.
Yeah, and I understand this is probably difficult to read, but essentially what we ask of our lighting team is they provide these photometric plans, and I know you guys have seen these before, that places our various fixtures across the site and then shows foot candles across the site and where we have greater concentrations or not. So we analyze that for code levels, and then also meeting the zoning ordinance that we are not spilling over to our neighbors. So we have essentially 4 fixture types, and we will get the cut sheets over to you. I sent those over to Carlos, but it was rather late in the day. But the specs are here on the sheet. But as I mentioned, 4 kinds. I think the A is essentially a pole type of light. I'm not sure if this has the height of that, but we have those mainly placed around the drive around the site. That's providing the foot candle level that we need for the car access around the site. And then we have a series.
Do you know approximately what height? I know it's not exact, but just so we know, is it overhead or is it kind of more ground level?
It is an overhead. I want to say 12 feet, but I really am guessing at that at the moment. I believe there's a requirement on how high it can be. So I know we're meeting that or under.
The height requirement for vehicles is 14 feet. So for any sort of public vehicle.
I was hoping I could sort of interpolate it from these numbers, but it's not evident to me. For instance, you'll see here, there's 24 inches. So that we have little bollard lights that are little pathway lights in those central courtyards. So anywhere we have these, you see that C fixture. So those are 2 foot. Actually, here we go.
VA shows at 16 feet.
There we go. Yeah.
That's the height that's permitted by code. That's authorized by code. Is at 16 feet, and those comply. Again, when you look at those foot candles, I'm not sure if that takes into consideration the landscaping and the screen. Under the code, we call it the buffer wall. In there, those will also minimize some of the foot candles that go onto the adjacent properties once they're in place.
Yeah, you can see that the lights are all on the back side of the drive. That's so that the light faces towards our building. And most of when you read those foot candles, brightness is in the drive. On the back side, it's hardly anything. It's 0.7, 0.1, 0.9, right behind at the property line.
Correct. Yeah, so there's a 16 foot along the drive. There are wall sconces, essentially where we have a door into each unit. So typically front door, and then down at the garage level, those are those B type fixtures. And you can see they're mounted typically at 6 foot for this foot candle study. And then those C fixtures, as I mentioned, the bollards in the plaza areas, essentially lining those pathways. We have 2 basically per pathway. And then D, those little stairs that we have coming up from the sidewalk along Dealman are just little wall fixtures to illuminate those steps.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Glad I became a panelist just for this.
All right, Carlos, any other public comments?
All right, if there's anybody else that would like to speak before the commission, if you can show your hand. And Chairman, at this point, I don't see any more hands on there.
Okay, good. One other thing I just kind of wanted to, I think, we were kind of going back and forth about where the 2 proposed parking spots, how wide that would be, whether we thought it should be 6 feet or 8 feet. And I think, I'm guessing based on, the conversations that I've been hearing, that most people would probably prefer 8 feet on the commission, but correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think.
Do we have a code section on this that delineates what that needs to be?
Yes, the minimum width for a parallel parked vehicle will consider the 8 feet.
So I think that's the answer, right?
The key thing that I need to ensure is that the fire lane, and I know it's in terms of its excessive width from the planning perspective, it's wide, but it has to be that uninterrupted. And I can't see it right now if it's a 20-foot width. I can't mess with that. That's not negotiable.
And then just whether we want to talk further, if that's sufficient or not, based on what we're seeing. And if you guys want to think about it too, we can do that too. But if you have some set ideas that we want to discuss right now, now would be the time. Go ahead, Jody.
I do.
Yeah, I'm confused on the maximum height. I thought it was 35 feet, but theirs is coming in at almost 37 and a half is what the gentleman was speaking of.
No, under the city center district, the structure height can go up to 70. Under the COR district, the maximum height permitted by right is 45 feet. In the SR single family residential district, it's 35 feet. The highest point of these structures from the, if I calculated this correctly, and Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, if I measured from the surface of the garage, which is the lowest point, to the highest peak of the roof, they were almost 38 feet in height. Most of these are going to be embedded into the ground, and the 38-foot exposure will probably be limited to the northernmost units.
That's correct. So all of that is we're below the 45-foot height and the 70-foot height of those two other zones.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none.
And I'm sorry, Chairman, just to make it clear, you know, in the design scenario that's been proposed, at least 6 additional stalls would be provided within this development. That includes the, let's see, there's 35 units. The additional 2 stalls per unit that go above and beyond code in there. So if I calculated this right, and forgive me if I'm wrong, there's 70, that'd be 76 stalls available above those that are required by the code in there. And I understand the commission's concerns in there, but as planners, we always deal with the Thanksgiving effect. We have a shopping center designed to the day after Thanksgiving in there, and then that's the only time it's filled, and then the rest of the year it's halfway in there. And these type of spillovers, if somebody has a party, yes, I couldn't guarantee that these will all be, gathering houses where they have parties in there, but it's possible. Look at the Hilltop Manor. That's just a crazy place,
Valley does make an interesting point about the size of that first level.
But I think it is a good balance. I think that some additional stalls were provided, but it is in effect above and beyond code. It might be something we want to analyze in the future. In the overall comprehensive plan vision, I mean, we see bigger developments with structured parking or additional off-street parking that would kind of blend in to everyone. I don't think the city's in a position to create a public parking garage or a public parking surface, even though we have one across the street. But these type of densities and these type of developments somewhat kind of feed off of each other and create those type of opportunities. Don't know what will happen further west over time. It may stay single family. We hope it does. In there, I think if we improve the street network and access onto Olive Boulevard, we'll preserve a lot of those single family homes in there. But we will see this area evolve, and there will be opportunities for maybe if Jiffy Lube redevelops that there's some advantage to having parking on the same side of the street too over there. Go ahead, sir.
I'm curious, as an example, the Oliver, which somewhat similar. Do you know how many spaces per unit
They probably in the overall calculation, they probably go between 1.1 to 1.25 per unit.
And they're smaller, obviously, spaces, but
yes.
To your point, planning for the worst is tough. I more parking be great. I'm more worried about the fire lanes, but I also, with short of eliminating a unit, I don't know if there's any other major options. So, and I recognize then there's a financial impact.
I just maybe point out, I think Carlos made a really good point there that may have been missed. As part of the comprehensive plan, we're talking about increasing density and creating a city center. That's what keeps being said. And part of any city center urban development like that is the idea of shared parking. I think that the city is not trying to produce large scale parking lots everywhere where buildings are spread out and people don't walk between them. And there is a public parking lot in City Hall right across the street, which would not be used at night when someone's having a party. This happens in other parts of the city as well, like Old Bonham School, where people park in the park across the street. I mean, it's the idea of shared parking is very common in an urban area.
Go ahead, Carol. I think you had your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to point out that even at my own single family home with my large lot, and there are times when, like, I'm just hosting book club. I have 20 people over for book club once a year. There's not enough parking. So we end up, parking up and down the street and trying to stay on neighbors' ways and so on. But you can't, any place you go, at some point, you're not going to have enough, whatever that means. There is no way to build out for once or twice a year times. I mean, you just can't provide that much asphalt. It's not real.
I also think, if I may, I also think that we need to just be focused on the code requirements and compliance with those requirements. I mean, if those are wrong, then we need to rewrite them. But I don't think it's efficient for us to be assessing parking for every single one of these projects on their own. I mean, the code is there and the guidance we give is for them to design to that requirement. And I think we need to stick with that, and either they meet it or they don't. I mean, same as the light levels, they either meet it or they don't. I don't know that it's super efficient for us to spend a lot of time discussing those items when they either meet the code requirements or they don't.
Well, Richard, the only thing is that what's different about this particular development is those parking spaces are like private parking spaces versus having, a community or stores or, apartment complex that has a lot of shared parking. It's common parking. So I think that's what brought up the issue during previous meetings. And I'm not sure if you were here on that meeting or not.
Yeah, I probably wasn't. So does our code not address that issue that,
it does not.
The multifamily type situation?
It addresses apartments when there's a common parking lot, but it does not address when these parking spaces.
Townhome. Got it.
Yes, exactly.
Got
And
it.
that will be something what we need to think about or talk about and consider, how we do address it.
Yeah, understood. Thanks for that clarification.
No problem. Okay.
I would just like to chime in one thing, if you don't mind, is that, like I said before, and all the people that I've shown this complex to, not one time has it come up. And if someone has a big entertaining concept, then those aren't my buyers. They're just not. For a 2,000 square foot unit, 2,200 square foot unit, whatever, it's not a big entertaining place. This is more people, some empty nesters, maybe someone wanting to get a child into the district, which is more common than anything else. And, I just wanted to remind you, I think I've had 20, 25 showings, and not at one time has this topic come up. And if it would, then they would just, not be a customer. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Carlos, is there anything else that we need to go over or discuss?
No, Chairman. I think the final requests have been identified. Our next meeting is March 3rd. I think addressing those items in there should address a lot of the comments, both expressed by the commission, those that are the code criteria, and also again the resident comments that have been heard. I do urge the developer to reach out to the subdivision leaders next door just to have a conversation. I think it would be prudent and beneficial, especially when addressing the council for the rezoning, to indicate that efforts were done and made in there. And outside of that, I don't have anything else.
Okay, good.
The county, that's the one thing I really need something from the county on this. And I do say that, and this is one, again, it's from experience. The city had difficulty aligning its curb cuts on Dealman because of the topology of the road. I did talk to Mr. Holmes about this in there, and we want assurances that the county is okay with this. We don't want to be used as a wedge with the county, that this is what the city approved and therefore the county has to authorize it. We'd like to see this done cooperatively.
Doug, what are you expecting to hear back from the county on this?
Well, that would be more for Ryan. He's handling that portion of the project. So if he's still on, I think that's for him.
Yeah, Doug, I will reach back out to the county, as I think a lot of us in the development right now industry know with the county, it's been a challenge getting things moving through there, but I will keep pushing and see if we can't get something here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Good.
We do fully expect that any official approval would be subject to MSD, subject to the county.
That is correct, yes. I think what we're looking for here, after talking with Carlos, is that we want some kind of a conceptual review similar to what we got with MSD, basically on the curb cuts and make sure there's no red flags. If I'm understanding what Carlos is looking for this time.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. With that being said, if there aren't any more comments, I think we're going to move on to the agenda items because we still got a lot to get through.
All right, Chairman, bear with me and let me do transfers here real quickly.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. Thanks, Doug.
Happy birthday, Doug.
Okay, I think we're all set. And now I'm going to quickly share my screen, and then we do have a presentation from the petitioner. Chairman, are we set?
We're set. Yeah, we can move on to, I believe we're on to new business, item 5, or item 5A, which is the text amendment. Oh, we're going to go right to Olive Crossing. Okay, so we're going
to. Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so we'll move on to item C, which is 9091 Olive Crossing Drive, Lot 3, Olivet Crossing Multi-Tenant Commercial Building. Petition types and community design review for a 10,218 square foot multi-tenant commercial building. Petitioner is Greg Yowitz with Keat Olivet Gateway LLC. Property owner is Keat Olivet Gateway LLC.
Real quickly, Chairman, I'll go. The location is, this is going to be Lot 3. This is the lot that's closest to the interchange. It's part of the Olive Crossing development, which is a planned development district. In our master plan, it kind of illustrated what I have here highlighted in yellow. Then we've seen the development plans where we saw that this would be a one-story structure, outdoor patio, plaza area. Now we go into the design review where we start looking at the materials, and this is what we were trying to facilitate in the previous petition. And now you're going to see from the petitioner the various scenarios for the development. So if If there's any questions regarding location or placement or questions about the PDD, I'd be glad to answer. And if not, I'm ready to bring over the petitioner who's going to kind of give an overview of what's proposed.
Any questions or comments for Carlos? Seeing none,
All right.
I think let's go ahead and bring on the petitioner.
Okay, I'm bringing Greg Yowitz. He is the Keat Properties or Keat Olivet LLC, the developer for Olive Crossing. Mr. Yowitz, you should be able to project your screen if you're set.
I am ready. All right, can you all see the Olive Crossing logo and
Yes, sir.
title? Awesome. All right, so I'm Greg Yowitz, 6 Heather Hill Lane. I'm the managing partner of Keat Olivet Gateway LLC, and I am really excited to show you some stuff tonight in how we want to develop Lot 3. Before I do that, though, oops, no, it's not going to work. Let's try this. No, okay, why isn't? Hold on. Huh? Why can't I get to the next slide? Oh, there we go. Okay. I want to give you an update on Olive Crossing in general. So for those of you who haven't been by, there's a lot going on at Olive Crossing. So the site work is fully underway, as you've probably seen. The old creek slash storm channel has been fully encased, and that work is complete in a brand new reinforced concrete 66-inch pipe as approved by MSD. The conduit for the 34,000 volt power lines is in the ground, and the wire is in the ground. Ameren is on site with their subcontractor Intren, restringing all the lines with the intent of completing all of that work, including the removal of the high 34,000 volt lines that traverse our site now. They're telling us they're going to be done by March 4th, which is exciting for us. The cast in place basin wall on the west side of the basin, which is a poured concrete engineered wall, is complete. They'll start the modular sections of that soon. We will be beginning the public water line work to connect our master service loop from Missouri American Water, hopefully any day now. A bunch of storm and sanitary work is going on. And then from a prior approval for Lot 4, our apartment building, which I believe we are going to name the Clover. I think that's the name we're settling on. We've already started drilling piers. The piers are necessary to hold the foundation up. They go actually as far as almost 55 feet into the ground. One future date to keep an eye on, I'm really excited about, is around April 1st, the cranes will arrive to start assembling the garage. The garage is a precast set of panels. And in about a month and maybe 6 weeks, I believe you'll start seeing vertical construction on our site, which is really exciting. And the Clover, if that's the name the marketing team settles on, which I think it is, we will be moving people in July of 2023. Oops, that's all right. All right, so Carlos already showed you the area in question. Now, I wanted to point out that with my submittal, you're going to see a building that looks very identical to what I submitted. However, we found out that the architect missed a little detail in that submittal, which was the actual elevations of the property. And so their original submittal, which you were given in advance, shows that the Centennial Greenway to public space patio connection on the east side of our building is at grade. That is not a reality because of the way the grades are. So I'm going to show you what that means in a minute, but I want to first go over the site plan. So we've got this approximately 10,200 foot building. We've got an oversized outdoor patio on the east side. We've actually got a covered canopy patio as well on the west side for multiple outdoor dining opportunities, along with a continuous, I think it's about 10 to 12 foot wide patio on the front. Because of the grade issue I'm going to show you, we are going to have an accessible ramp that comes from the Centennial Greenway and dumps you right onto our project. And actually right in this area here, if it'll let me zoom, there we go. These are the bikes for the bike racks. Oops, there we go. And so you'll come down this ADA level path, or ADA grade limited path, and pop out into the public space in the development. This is our detention basin. Just thought I'd call out, we're parking this piece at about the little over 6 to 1. And that's because we anticipate having restaurants on both ends and don't want to end up with a short parking issue, though we are allowing, we've added an extra 50 spaces into our parking garage in the apartments as overflow for retail and restaurants. I am calling out, which most people wouldn't, where our trash enclosure is, because I want to show you where it is and why. So ideally, this would be not necessarily in this area, but in this prominent site. The east side really wasn't an option because that's where we want people to gather. Up against the building's really a bad idea. And where we were going to put it in this area, in this parking bay that I'm circling with my mouse, which hopefully you could see, we cannot do that. The reason for that is from this green space through the middle of the parking lot is an underground biodetention system. If you've seen all the stacks of yellow devices or yellow pieces on my site, so water gets filtered through there through a filtration system underground. You can't put a garbage can on top of it for risk of dropping it, for risk of damaging the biofiltration system. And that's something that came from MSD. Now, we're going to screen it, as you're going to see in the 3Ds, and I think quite to everyone's satisfaction. And then up here at the top, we have the minimum 12-foot wide Centennial Greenway that we talked about in the master zoning agreement. Let's try to get this to, there we go. Okay, so this is a view looking southwest. And so what I want to point out here is originally we thought the grade of this patio and the grade of the sidewalk were the same. At least the architect thought that, because he didn't, one of the people on the team didn't fully read the civil plans that were approved by the sewer district in the city. And so we found that out about 7 days ago, but we were able to get this together. And I think we came up with a really awesome solution, because if I'm a diner and I'm sitting on this patio, if my head is about 3.5 feet above the patio while I'm dining, and the patio is 4 feet above the roadbed, I now am above all that action with the cars, right? And it creates more of a peaceful space in order to dine, because I'm not looking right at the cars as they go by. I'm actually looking over the top of them. And so what'll happen is the grade will go up here along the rise of the detention wall, and we'll obviously screen and fence that with a nice railing. You know, the architects are concepting metal with a wood top, and then you'll come out to where the bikes were, patio dining area. And so the featured end cap on the east side, what we're contemplating here is upwards of a 18 or 19 foot ceiling in this restaurant space. And there's an option A and an option B. Option A is that it's really high ceilings with cool light fixtures hanging down. And option B is that a portion of it may contain mezzanine dining with a stairwell up. We have to work on the engineering of that. There's a restaurant we're talking to that may want that. And so we may or may not do the mezzanine, but if we don't, it's just going to give you that really cool high ceiling feel, lots of glass. We're contemplating these tilt up panel garage doors that will open up in good weather, so that you can have indoor outdoor dining. You know, what I say is, you know, this isn't Olivet now. This is the Olivet of the future, and this is what we want to bring. We want to bring a different level of design and development and functionality. So then moving forward, let's see if this will go. Let's see, go this way. There we go. Okay, so this is a straight on view. Now, given the timetable from the discovery of the grading problem, what I really think this wall wants to be, which is the foundation of the raised patio, is some form of mural. We didn't have time to design it. We can certainly work with the staff to select something going forward, but something not really loud, right? But something that's really fitting for our community. And so we'll work on the design of that. But this gives you sort of a, if you're in your car driving west, this is the view you're going to see. And so what you see here on the left, where it says Olive Crossing, is what we're contemplating is an engineered into the ground perforated metal wall that, when it patinas, will look like olive trees. And that'll provide a visual and sound refuge to our guests that are in just the public space, so that they're not hearing all that traffic noise from the highway, but yet air can blow through it because it's a perforated metal. And this is the retaining wall inside the basin. This is a view from, if you were hanging out on the patio. And so what's going on here is that screen wall on the right, fountain below it. And what we're going to do, because the grade from the south end of the fountain to the north end drops about 2 feet, we're going to raise the ground and put in a banding so that we can have grassy areas up against the fountain. Let me zoom in here. People to sit on the ledge of the fountain if they want, right? To, again, have that option if you're dining here or you're waiting for a table or you work in the office building and you just want some peace and quiet, you can go sit here. Oops, again. Okay, just another view. One of the features that we're working on with our architect are these cubes. So you see in the patio sort of a randomized pattern of different color concrete. And what we want to do is extrude that concrete to create seating benches. And there's an Easter egg here of sorts where we want to, if we can do this right, where it lasts and it doesn't age poorly, is to etch, meaningful sayings into the concrete. Again, we're really trying to create something different here, where people, when they're here, they know they're here and they remember what Olivet is all about. And so we're, haven't fully developed the language or the how, but that's our goal. Straight on view from inside the parking lot looking north. We figure this building will have somewhere between 3 and 6 tenants. Again, depends on the size. One of the restaurants I'm talking to for the east end would take about 3,500 feet through here. And then we'll see how we break up the middle and the west. Another view from the road, just pulled back a little bit. This is the view from the main entry, looking at the corner. And I've had some conversations with staff about what to do other than flowers in this area. However, one of the challenges we have is that there is an immense amount of utilities through here. The 82nd Street relief line comes in from north of Olive, goes through here. So we're not 100% quite there yet with this, but we're intending not just to meet the code, but to exceed the code in landscaping. This sort of dense tree area is meant to hide. This is where the electrical panels and the gas service needs to be. We're going to have 2 exit doors on the north side that come down some steps that meet up with the patio, which I can show you back in the site plan if you want. Here's a little top-down view. Again, just giving sort of form and scale to the whole building. And you've got the apartments here that unfortunately due to Google Images are flat, and flat Chevy over here. And then here's what we're thinking about material-wise. So we want to use a mix of a wood cladding that's actually metal that looks like wood to give it longevity, but to give it a very rich tone. And then we're contemplating a very complementary ephes to mix with the glass, the mullions, and the stone, which I'm personally very excited about. This is, don't pay attention to the grade lines here. This is the old drawing that we submitted before we realized the grade is actually go the other way. And so the building's the same, it's just where the sidewalk hits it is a little bit different. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, thanks for that. That was, it looks nice, I have to say. Anybody on the commission have any specific questions or comments for Greg? Not seeing any. Greg, the only comment I would have is on that patio on the east side. You got that noise barrier, perforated metal barrier for the other kind of sitting area by the fountain. Do you think you're going to have any noise barrier at all for the people eating outside, or is that going to be fine just being elevated up like that?
We think it'll be fine being elevated, and there's really no way to do it without encasing the patio, which aesthetically, I want people to see people enjoying a meal outside an Olivet right at the corner, right? People honking as they drive by and they see their friends, and you're having a piece of pizza. Hint, hint, I'm talking to an Italian restaurant for that side. It's kind of what I want in Olivet, nice pizza, pasta, salad place. So Yeah, I'm not even sure per se that the screen is going to really block that much noise because 170 is so much higher. I just like the visual feel that you're sort of secluded in a node, in like a public node refuge. Again, maybe more so for the office building tenants, the residents of the apartment building, and just the general public that are there waiting for their table, or, that's a perfect area for small outdoor concerts, things like that. So, yeah.
Good. All right, Carlos, if there's not any, Carlos, is there anything specific that you wanted to discuss with the commission members? You're muted, Carlos, just in case.
I just thought it meant he had no comments and it was all going to be approved.
No, I don't. I think we kind of went over it again in your staff memo. It talks about the consistency with the overall plan set that has been adopted with the master concept plan, and kind of excited about the potential uses and uses.
Yeah, it does. It looks very nice. Carol's got a question.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I really like the design. The use of the materials and so on are very. I like them a lot. I get one of the things I did want to mention is that I've become a real convert, I guess, for native landscaping. And so I would encourage you to use native plants and trees, etc., whenever it's possible and appropriate for you to do so.
In fact, I believe the consultant or landscaping consultant, their company name is Native Landscapes Inc. So I have a feeling that's going to happen. And by code, it actually will happen throughout the basin because that's an MSD regulated thing. But we obviously want to tie it all together. And, I know the point system exists. I've done it before, but we'll be well in excess of those points.
Good. Let's remember, we still have to see if there's any public comments too. So Carlos, will you?
All right, Chairman, if there's anybody anybody in the public that would like to speak regarding this petition, if you can show your hand. Again, it's located in the center lower part of your Zoom window. I recognize all the names that are there, Chairman, so I don't believe we're going to have any. Just give it 1 second, though. And I see none.
Okay, great.
All right. I am going to, if the commission is ready to consider a motion, I do have a written motion prepared. And that should go up on your monitor screens.
Okay, any other further discussion before this? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
Chairman?
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to motion to approve the petition for design review in accordance with section 400.2180 for construction of a one-story, 10,218 square foot multi-tenant commercial retail building for lot 3 in accordance with ordinance number 2675 and number 2725 as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated February 17, 2022, subject to staff conditions noted therein.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Can I ask a question real quick before you vote?
Yeah, go ahead.
The specificity of the square footage of the building, if it's plus or minus, when we actually build it, we engineer it, it could be 100, 200 feet less, it could be 50 feet more. And I just want to make sure that we're in compliance ordinance wise in the event as the structural engineer gets involved, if we lose some square foot here or there, or pick up a foot or two, that we're not outside the context of the approval.
Carlos?
Yeah, I think overall there is some leeway on the administrative side as that is set unless it starts passing a threshold. For 10,000 square feet, I think like 500 square feet would be a threshold, so as long as you're within that range, 500 more, 500 less. After that, we kind of need to sit and talk about it And it
Oh,
may
that's
be
fine.
something we have to reference back to the commission.
Right, it may be 9,900, it may be 10,400. So I think that 500, I just want to make sure that we didn't have to come
Understand.
back over a few square feet.
And
Sorry for interrupting.
similar to that, Carlos, I guess you mentioned possibly mezzanine. I assume that wouldn't count as a second story because it's listed as a 1-story. You know, inside the restaurant, you talked about potentially another level. I don't know if that counts as a second story if it's not fully enclosed as a floor. Just making sure we're not getting into semantics.
Yeah, I understand. And I would be. I'd be fine.
I was going to say a mezzanine is not typically considered
Typically not.
a separate floor, you know, by itself, you know, especially since Greg's already kind of indicated that the height of that building is going to be like 18 feet, you know, or inside, you know, so having a mezzanine, that's usually kind of more of a sub level inside that first floor. At least that's how I would understand. I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Richard, is there a legal issue with that?
That is outside of my bailiwick, so I would.
All right.
And Chairman, what I would if the motion maker is willing to consider just restating the motion, but eliminating the 1-story, 10,218 square feet, because essentially you're referring back to the plans that were submitted today. So it is for the construction of a multi-tenant commercial building for Lot 3, as presented to the commission. This gives, you know, this at least doesn't tie the numerical values to the approval.
Good. I think that's
Is
good.
that okay?
Mr. Chairman?
Good.
Yeah, I consent to the change. Do I need to read it again?
I think we're okay if you are. We understand that
Yeah.
that motion does not include the 1-story, 10,218 square feet.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner, seconded by Daniel Rosenberg. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass?
Approve.
Commissioner Rosenberg?
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis?
Approve.
Commissioner Brophy?
Approved.
Commissioner Rich?
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner?
Approved.
Chairman Dragell?
Approved.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all. The motion passes unanimously. This is a commission-only acted on application because it's part of the master development plan. So the next step is the application for building permits.
I very much appreciate your time tonight, and I hope in the next 60, 90 days to have a set of building permit applications and drawings in front of Carlos for review.
Very good. Thanks. It's good to see that moving along.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Carlos, I remember we talked about item B that we kind of skipped over, that might be deferred. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Did we still need to do the text amendment?
Yes, we do, and that would be a short motion, and we can hold that off to the very end of the meeting, because I still have a couple of people that are on for some of the discussion items.
Oh,
We can
okay.
be pretty brief
Yeah.
on those.
I mean, we're already at 9:42. Is there any of those items on the discussion that we can, defer?
The goal would be just to kind of introduce the commission to these, and then if there's any reactions or comments, to forward those to staff so we can work with the developer and this is also to keep the commission kind of informed of what's coming in or what we're working on, if that's okay. I
No, that's
understand
fine.
it's late, and I do greatly appreciate everybody's patience on this. The first one, and I'm not going to get into the specifics too detailed, is when the Oliver development was submitted, we talked about the properties that were on the west side of Hilltop. And those several of those properties have been assembled, not all of them. And the proposal is to create these 2-unit single-family residences along that corridor. And there's a quick view of that. I do have the developer and petitioner in here. A couple of things, and reason we bring it to the commission. It is a proposal that would provide a little bit more density down at Hilltop, but not to the extent of the recent approval. So it's kind of a reasonable mix, because you'll have the Oliver and the 208 units of the Oliver behind that. You have single family homes that are kind of occurring, within that vicinity. And we do anticipate that there'll be more construction in that general area over time. And again, real quickly, just to kind of show you that location in a county map. I thought it was going to go. Yeah, the area is north of Chevy's, all the way up to this point. The last two houses have not been cooperative or willing to be part of the development. So what you would see in the slide I previously showed you would kind of be reflective of just those lots along there. And again, overall the density would be increased, but not significantly to the extent of a multifamily unit. So I just wanted to illustrate those to the commission. They've been working to put together some fine elevations to give us a good idea of the design and such. And the intent of these is that these individual units would have individual backyards in there. So they're kind of attached single family homes in there with their own private lot. So.
Very good. Okay.
Mr. Commissioner, if I could ask, are these rental or are these intended to be properties sold
They
as
would
homes,
be,
Carlos?
they would be for sale.
Carlos, would there be able to park in front? Would there be off or on-street parking in front of those?
And in this design, yes.
Okay.
That is the intent, that you would still continue to be able to park along Hilltop in that area. I do have the applicants here in there if there's any questions, but also understanding the commission's time.
Do we need to bring on the petitioners at this time, or should we wait until they bring something a little bit more?
I'll bring Mr. Cohen just in case there's something I missed, and if not, Mr. Cohen, if you can just be brief. And I apologize. I mean, this went really quick. Andy.
Hey, Carlos, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, how are you? Thank you all for having me tonight. I know it's been a late night, so I just wanted to just do a quick introduction, see if I can make a few comments, and then hopefully get a chance to get some information back from Carlos and then you all, the commission members. My name is Andy Cohen. I own Kennerly Custom Homes. There are 9 properties that I have under contract that I've assembled to with the intent to develop 14 villas or townhomes, and they would be 7 buildings. Rob, you made a great question. My plan and my intent is to preserve and offer street parking. This current configuration would offer approximately 14 spots. In addition to each unit itself would have 2 enclosed garage spots. And one of the things that I wanted to try to offer with this development is still have it feel like a home, which is why I wanted to offer and complement the area with a rear backyard. I think this product would work well and sell well in the area. I think it's a great transition down from the 200 apartments that are being developed by Opus Development to the rear of that. So there'd be a sort of a stepping down of an apartment multifamily to a townhome villa, and then to single family homes that I've also been developing on Hilltop and Collingwood in the area as well. So I just wanted to do a quick intro, and I appreciate Carlos putting me on. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or if there's another time that's convenient, I'm more than happy to make myself available as well.
Okay, is there any commission members that have some questions specific for Andy? Tim, it looks like you're reaching.
Yeah, I was trying to zoom in and zoom out. Are those 2 parking spaces per garage, or is that one parking spot per garage.
So Tim, each unit would have two spots enclosed. It's hard to tell with that image. If you look at one of those that Carlos is on there, it shows some vehicles that are sitting in front of the garage doors. So you'd have 2 parking spots per house or per villa. And then there is frontage that would allow for 2 additional spots in front of the garage door. So I know there's been discussions with the other townhomes about 2 versus 4, but my plan and intent is to exceed what the minimum parking requirements would be, as well as offering street parking, preserving street parking, I should say.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I know it's late, and I love to talk to you guys all night about it, but I'm sure you've got other other things to discuss as well.
Well, this is an interesting project, so I appreciate it, and I think you're right. It does make a good transition between. So
I appreciate that. You know, you guys do. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Sure.
Okay, well, we look forward to seeing this.
I'll press on with it then. Sounds great.
All right. Okay, Carlos.
Okay.
Should we move on to the next item?
Yes, we've had interest regarding cannabis establishments in all of that. We have one current establishment that does extraction in the Dillman Rock Island Industrial Park, but we have interest in a property address is 1220 North Price, and you see it here in your monitor screen. It's a pretty large building. It's over 130,000 square feet, but it's an old building. It's tired. It used to be a Southern Comfort distillery and warehouse. Then it was a Buffalo Tools distributor and warehouse, and at one point it might have been used by I think it was Engineered Air that used to do some Army surplus and vehicle parts way back when we had Carter Carburetor and quite a bit of manufacturing in this area. Primarily, this goes back to our strategic plan conversation regarding highest and best use, and this building has been used primarily as warehouse storage. So when you look at the number of people per square foot, it's always been pretty low. Overall, it's property. It's an overall value through county. We've seen a decline in its assessment, almost 8% from its peak in there. Though it's a good location, it's an older building. The heights aren't as tall as like the Amazons would like to see. The square footage, while it's almost 132,000 square feet, there are some portions in the warehouse that are 2-story and levels. We were approached by a business that would like to purchase and occupy that building, because for the most part it's been a speculative building, just being managed and then and leased out or for other users in there. So this time we would have an owner-occupied user, and what they do is that they grow medical cannabis. So it'll be a cultivation facility, what we'd call a cultivation facility. The property is zoned light industrial, which is part of our Allied district, and under the Allied district, that type of use, cultivation, the same use such as the extraction or the distribution and manufacturing of cannabis would be permitted by right. The next step would be for them to apply for their occupancy inspections and building permits. However, in discussions with them, they brought to our attention that they had some concerns on the process, because apparently when you cultivate medical marijuana or cannabis, and I apologize, it's not my expertise, there is an odor associated with the growing in there, and they wanted to ensure a process that they could collaboratively work with the city to establish a process to mitigate any odor issues that they may have with the adjacent neighborhood, because it's right against single-family residential properties on the Hilltop Arrowhead in there. So they did do some reach outs to the Arrowhead trustees. They've spoken with a neighbor immediately adjacent to that property also in there. So they've been working on outreach efforts and also working with the city to come together to put up some process of mitigating odor issues as the facility operates. That being said, the only way to make this work formally is to authorize the use through a special, what we call a special permit, a conditional use. And ultimately that is an ordinance that is prepared for an individual property for their operations when we find that the operations, while being consistent with the underlying zoning district, there are unique circumstances that we would like to, lack of a better word, regulate or have a system or process to ensure operations mitigate and are reasonable with the surroundings. They've been very receptive to that process of going through a special permit to do so. And again, through this special permit process, we'll establish a sequence and the types of events and the procedures that we would follow to try to work if odor issues were apparent to the site. It also would outline the improvements that they would do to the structure and the building to mitigate preemptively the odors that would be generated through the site. So I do have representatives from the development group that are here, and I appreciate them staying through the process. And Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions the commission might have. And if not, if I can transfer the business owner that's looking to acquire the site.
Is there anybody that has any specific questions for Carlos? Otherwise, Carlos, yeah, let's go ahead and bring him on, but let's try to keep it as brief as possible.
I understand. Yes, sir. All right. John, I see the company proper brands identified, but I'm not sure who is there. I would assume John, and I'm not sure if
Hi, folks. Carlos, you there?
Yes. Yes.
Hi.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys? Quite the meeting tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
We appreciate you coming online. If you don't mind, just state your name and address for the record. That would be great.
Yeah, great. My name is John Pennington. I live at 354 East Bodley in Kirkwood, Missouri. And I'm one of the founders and CEO of Proper Cannabis, located here in St. Louis, Missouri. And we look forward to working and meeting with you guys.
Good. Just real quick, as it was brought up, odor issues are a significant issue with the extraction process. Can you quickly kind of go over what type of system you're going to be using, kind of the production, and how much noise also the ventilation system would generate?
Yeah, we have engineers and architects. We did not know what to expect for this meeting. I think this was kind of introductory by nature, but at some juncture, you guys will meet our team. I will say that we have a facility in Rock Hill off of Manchester Road, and we were just awarded through Greenway Magazine the Cultivation Company of the Year, the Manufacturing Company of the Year, and the Company of the Year in the entire state of Missouri. Carlos and staff has visited our facility. They're beautiful facilities, but the odor is of no surprise. So we use state-of-the-art equipment and filtration systems. No different than any other manufacturing type of system. Noise is very, very limited, if any. But you're talking about tens of thousands of square feet of indoor farming with plants that have terpene profiles and beautiful aromas that can certainly catch people off guard. And what I told Carlos and Barb up front is we just want to be prepared and make sure that we're a good neighbor and communicating ahead in advance when and if and as questions arise. So at some juncture, we'll present our floor plans design and all of our engineering equipment and filtration equipment. And I think, you guys could be armed to ask all the questions you may have.
Well, good. We appreciate you, stopping by, making the introductions and everything. That's great. Just real quick, is your process going to be the mirror image as the Rock Hill, or will it be different?
Yeah. So Rock Hill,
lines?
we cultivate. We have a manufacturing lab. We employ about 140 people there. This would just be a cultivation facility. The building is much larger than we need. But as Carlos mentioned, there's some kind of functional obsolescence to the building that allow us to, use it for some overflow space and general warehouse space. Smaller version of what we have in Rock Hill, and we would phase into it, over the course of time.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Carol.
Carlos, this question is for you in part. But how would you measure or define the smell from the facility? You can't.
Yeah, it's a great question. When you think about the human body and the brain, there's millions and millions of components of smell that we all enjoy or not, right? Typically from a technical standpoint, in any odor, you'll measure it in parts per million of something that's emitted from a manufacturing process. And they're frequently measured on a small fraction of a parts per million, but that doesn't mean you can't smell it. So, it's unfortunately subjective. There aren't any knowns of health issues or risk. But, what you smell and enjoy can be different than what a different commissioner smells. So, no different than a charcoal or food or a hog farm or oil or gas so I'm not the technical expert, but again, it's just something to be aware of, and you have to deal with it. And the good, it's no longer a controlled substance; it's a permitted use. And we're currently serving about 165,000 patients in Missouri, and that's pretty cool.
So my question really was a way of thinking about Carlos writing up a special permit, and it just we'd have to define this parameter in some way, and I'm just trying to envision how we might go about doing that.
That's a good question. We're in conversations with a legal firm that represents proper cannabis and a lot of other businesses. Armstrong Teasdale, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but they are working with the city to put some parameters together. There's a lot of good information on the internet now in terms of what other communities have done, especially in Colorado, California, and I think there was even one in New Mexico or Las Vegas of similar or contractual agreements or arrangements that they put together with operators in there. The goal in the system is, again, to recognize formally that there is an odor that gets emitted. And they're stepping forward to do this, even though that activity is already permitted by code. That odor, isn't at a level to substantiate that it's a nuisance. So it'd be difficult for us to try to control it as a nuisance odor in there. But this will give us some parameters to kind of establish, what we agree upon on some of those standards in there, and then give us for the city's part, some leverage or mechanism to make sure that we address those type of issues in there. So, we don't know what we're going to see yet. We're working with them collaboratively, and we're gathering some information. Their legal firm has worked with Rock Hill and some other communities, I believe, with different clients to put those together. in there. So we're kind of curious to see what, and we're still not at a point of what exactly they're going to propose yet. They have some thoughts, some concepts, but they're still kind of studying that building and putting those numbers together. I hope that kind of answers what you're asking.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I've contemplated, having to write special permit and how to deal with smells before, and I was just wondering how you're approaching it.
And again, the goal in this special permit, at least for me, from the enforcement side, is to establish the procedures that we agree upon on how we would, first address it, try to mitigate it, and when we would, agree to disagree and need to go the next level. And I think it would, the nuisance code just isn't, that while the nuisance code works for those type of circumstances, but it's more adversarial than it is cooperative.
Okay, well, I think this is good for this meeting, for a good introduction, good little bit of an understanding kind of where we're going to go. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go
if I
ahead.
could ask a question. Thank you. Is it Pennington, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
I just kind of want to ask an odor question. When we go down Arsenal, that street Arsenal, and we smell Anheuser-Busch and that aroma is around for God knows how long. I don't know what an aroma reaps out from the cultivation of marijuana, but does that aroma hang around as long as like what Anheuser-Busch's nasty smell is in the air? Or is this something that is a very quick kind of a situation in an aroma?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's like any odor, the day, the direction the wind's blowing and the strength of the wind, typically what we'll see, is on peak days of harvest, right? So you'll experience the greatest level of probably smell actually the day or two after the harvest when the terpenes are probably at its highest level, and when they kind of terminated from, the growing process, and then you're having on hands approach, it's emitting smell, right? And then it subsurfaces but there's no prediction, and I think that's what we've talked to Carlos about is creating more of a process. So in the event there is a day where someone smells it, we would welcome a call. We have a 24-hour presence on the facilities, and you take note. And then if that's coming from a neighborhood, how far, then we can detect it, and then we can measure it in real time to figure out if there's any impact and the frequency of those calls. So that's what we would recommend. I think that's what the attorneys are sorting through. But I wish I had a clear answer to your question. I can tell you it would not be as consistent as a massive facility like Anheuser-Busch that's manufacturing some of the largest I guess amounts of beer in the country. But again, what one person likes, one person may not like, right?
This is definitely a difficult challenge for the cannabis industry. Go ahead, Barb. You're muted.
Thank you. There's been a couple things I just want to comment on, having worked with Proper Cannabis now for a little bit on this. And one is I just want to acknowledge they want to come into the city and be a good corporate citizen. And I greatly appreciate that. They want to actually be involved in all of that. And that's great because they were bringing up the fact that they want to come to a place where, they don't want to set up shop and then have a lot of complaints, right? So that's good. They've reached out to the neighborhood association. Again, that's a great move on any business. It's a light industrial park. Some of you may remember that Auto Beauty, who's been another great corporate citizen in that North Price industrial park. We have them because people were concerned in Webster Groves about their smell. We've had no complaints, and so that again is one of the things that, it is a light industrial park. There are a lot of uses. And so you could have somebody set up shop there that could have some odors and different things that we would not be able to do a lot about. Proper cannabis, one of the things that they've been working with an attorney. And one of the things that that I hear you talk about too is, well, if the smell gets bad, what do we do? That reactionary enforcement. And what we're trying to do with the special use permit is not get to that. Is what we're trying to do with this, and what they have proposed, their initial proposal, which isn't even finalized yet, is a step of what they will do prior to building, what they will do within the build, during the build, when we will check in on the odors, and how we might mitigate, how we may determine when there are some issues. And again, with how do we then work collaboratively to address those issues. And so I think the framework is good. I don't think the city nor Proper Cannabis want to be in a position where we have somebody come and then there are neighbors upset. And so I think that the fact that they're here tonight is just to be really upfront about, about this. And I feel, I'm hoping this will work out. I'm hoping we can get, a local light industrial manufacturer. I'd love to see some type of manufacturing return to those light industrial, that light industrial area, to have people employed there as opposed to just warehousing things there. But again, it needs to fit, right? And but I am very I feel very positive about the road in which we're going down on this, because I think that the goal is that we will end up with a solution. Not only that, we don't want to be not in a reactionary type of thing, because you folks know better than anybody that it's hard to, once something goes bad, to enforce a rule is hard, but to actually set up some parameters and some discussions midway, and then to actually, even look at, well, if a change needs to be made, how might that be financed? And so I am looking forward to continued discussions. And, I hope it works out. But I think that, we all want the same goal in the end.
Thanks, Barb. Appreciate it. I think we kind of know where we're going right now. So I appreciate the introduction and discussion. But I think do we have anything more that we want to discuss at this time? Seeing none, I think we will move on, and we look forward to kind of working through this in the future. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Carlos, you're muted now.
All right, sir.
All right, good.
I do have one last item, Chairman, and that is regarding the amendment. And if the commission's ready, I do have the staff report and the suggested motion. And all this amendment does is add the multifamily component to be a standalone product or development in the city center district.
I don't have any problem, because I think this will be fast. So I know it's getting late, but maybe you can go through it really quick and show us where it's going to change.
Sure. The only thing that we would add in that within the permitted uses in the city center district is that right now you can have multi-story structures, but the ground level is kind of limited to retail or commerce only, and then you can have residential above on the upper levels. This kind of minimizes the development that we saw earlier today, but through a site plan review process, which is what we're conducting anyway right now, that the commission would be authorized to permit multifamily residential structures, just build, multifamily residential structure buildings by themselves. in there as part of the city center district. This will be consistent with the vision of the comprehensive plan. As you've seen in that city center district illustration, there's multi-story buildings that could reflect only residential use. This will also be something consistent with the Oliver development. The only way we went around this in the Oliver is that we considered the entire development area and added the 3,500 square foot commercial building and the garage structure to make it a mixed use overall. This would just kind of clear that. So this is the only change that we would be adding on here. And that, again, it's only subject to the commission approval.
So it's kind of some housekeeping that we need to do for our regulations. Anybody have any further discussion on this?
Richard, just one quick question. Hey, Carlos, I was thinking about this as we saw the presentation of the new housing developments, the new townhomes. I think we have a fairly robust set of guidelines for how we assess the design for residential houses. I don't think we have as robust a set of design guidelines for these new multifamily type residential structures. I'm curious to get your and the group's thoughts on that, because I don't, I saw the rendering that you put up, Carlos, for the, whatever it was, 8-unit townhomes kind of in a strip. And I don't know, it's hard to assess whether that's appropriate or not. I think maybe we should do some thinking about what we want those to look like and whether we're okay. We spend a lot of time on roof slopes for regular houses and how they match up with the roofs on the neighboring properties. Are we going to be okay with roofs that just look like a single, row the entire time? Are we going to try to have more dynamic approach to the way that those townhomes are designed? Is there going to be differentiation among them, or can they all look exactly the same? Do they need to be the same distance away from the street or have some depth? These are all questions that popped into my head, and I don't think we have any guidelines to assess, or really any other developments in Olivet to base our judgments off of.
And it might be something, the set of regulations that would control or govern a development like that or something similar, at least within 800 feet of Olive Boulevard, is our what we call Chapter 428, the Community Design Standards for the Olive Boulevard corridor. In that, it talks about site planning, it talks about building orientation, it talks about architectural elements, including, it has a section on architecture, I should say, which talks about masses, voids, the same categories that are within our residential design guidelines, along with entrances and such. Then it gets into landscaping and the criteria for landscaping, and then lighting, exterior lighting. And it might be something to go through and then to see if that needs to be reinforced in there. It's been a while since we last addressed that section. I mean, we played around with some tweaks on the buffering and on the building orientation, but we haven't really gotten into the architecture for a while. We did talk about materials, and I think that was right before you were on the commission, where we had broadened the expanse of materials. We had one of our commission members that was an architect and it became a council member, kind of assisted us in that process and expanded the amount of materials and the percentage that would be permitted in there. So
okay, yeah, I think we do a really good job of vetting the residential proposals that come our way. I want to make sure that we're equipped to do an equal job of assessing the new multifamily properties that come our way, so that we don't, sign off on something and then regret it later.
Understand?
I think it's worth revisiting. So I think it's a good idea.
All right.
Okay. That being said, oh, go ahead, Carol.
Carl, can we go back to the amendment that you were talking about? That's just for the city center district?
That is the permitted uses in the city center district only. Yes.
Okay.
And right now that, multifamily residential is permitted in the COR district. It's permitted in the MU district. It was just kind of really an oversight on this of how the development was going to come around.
So why are we changing it now?
One is that we have this development proposal before us off of Dealman. And I believe that the city center district would be the best zoning category for that development.
Okay.
We did have a discussion a couple of years ago about residential density and coming up with a different multi-family or residential district. And at that time, that there wasn't an urgency yet to try to adopt something. And I don't think it's worth going back and reestablishing that.
Okay. I just wanted to get a better
No, good question.
picture.
Okay. I guess, do we need to see if we have any public comments related to this?
All right. Bear with me 1 second, Chairman. I know there was at least 2 more people. All right. If anybody would like to speak regarding the text amendment, if you can show your hand. Okay, Chairman, at this time I see none.
Okay. If there's any further discussion, if not, do I hear a motion?
Go ahead, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Brent.
A motion to recommend approval and forward to the City Council an amendment to section 400.810 authorized uses regarding multifamily developments being part of Article 8A CC City Center District of Chapter 400 Zoning Regulations Title 4 Land Use of the Olivet Municipal Code.
I will second that motion.
Motion's been made by Brian Lewis, seconded by Richard Brophy. He got there first. Carlos, please call the vote.
Commissioner Spiegelglass?
Approve.
Let me turn off the Commissioner Rosenberg?
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis?
Approve.
Commissioner Brophy?
Approved.
Commissioner Rich?
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner?
Approved.
Chairman Dragao?
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously. This item will be forwarded to the council at its next scheduled meeting. And then since it is an amendment to the city zoning ordinance, a public hearing will be scheduled for the council, before the council on March 8th, 2022.
Very good. All right. I guess we'll move on then we have no meeting minutes, so we're moving on to that. Just final reports. Carlos?
Chairman, I have nothing to elongate. You can see a lot of that activity going on the corridor. It's pretty exciting. It's kind of overwhelming, but a lot starting to become visual. You're starting to see that third dimension. Opus should be starting demolition. If it wasn't for the weather today, they probably would have started today, tearing down the homes out for Irvington and Rhyme Court and beyond that. And then, we got a wave of new home applications. It just seems like it keeps getting busy and busier. So
wow.
I think we got 5 new home single family home petition applications in there, but we didn't get any new commercial stuff, so that was a plus. It gives us a breather for now. One interesting note, and I know, and I appreciate everybody's time, but I did note to the city manager, we had with the activity going down in U City, several tenants have been looking at facilities here in Olivet. 2 we know that have secured space in Olivet Center. That's where Party City and Tuesday Morning is at. I believe it is Seoul Asian Groceries and Arts and Acupuncture will be locating center. We're helping them through the permitting process. With those, I think there'll be 1 remaining tenant space in Olivet Center, and it's been a long time, especially since I've been here. I don't recall where the center was 100% occupied, but we're going to be maybe about 1,000 square feet short, and there is somebody looking at that already. So,
wow, that's great. That's great. Okay, missing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Commission Chairman. The only thing I'm gonna report to you all is that the city staff has been very, very busy being mindfully thinking and giving a list to the city council. And the city council has been in discussion with regards to the ARPA funds and how and where we feel the highest and best priority of use for approximately up to $1.58 million that the city of Olivet will be getting from the ARPA funds. So it's gold for us. It's another wonderful opportunity amongst all the opportunities that you've all been seeing and Carlos has talked about. And that's the most important thing outside of the fact that there will be an election in the first Tuesday of the month in April. And beyond that, that's all I have to report. Thank you all for everything you do. You know, I appreciate you. You know, I love you.
Thank you. Dawn, do you have anything?
I would say just kind of a quick note that summer camps are already available for registration. Get on that stuff. And there are there's like a spring break camp as well. So yeah, you'll check it out if you haven't already.
Very good. Thanks. All right, guys. Sorry this went so long, but I think we had to pay the price for getting the previous night off. So take care. Have a good night and sleep well. Appreciate it. We're adjourned the meeting at 10:25.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Bye-bye.